That's
Let's
it.
hope not, because we'll get stopped again.
I know, right? No strikes from YouTube. Hello, welcome to the Odds War Game. I'm your host, Rob. Welcome to the Age of Sigmar Monday show with a multitude of gorgeous guests. Yeah, and co-hosts, really. They're not guests, they're co-hosts. And I'll introduce them right now. To my left is leader of the Cult of Nathan, Mr. Nathan Prescott. Nathan, how are you?
All good here.
I really enjoyed the fact that for a mainly audio show, you started to dance as a response to that question. So thank you. The one of the biggest liars probably on the entire internet, as he hasn't delivered on the Undergargants, is James. Hi, James. Welcome to the show. And of course, a man who loves Liberators so much, he wants you to DM about them every single day. He also loves elves. It's Dan. Hi, Dan.
If you could all stop DMing me pictures of Liberators and tagging me in pictures of Liberators, that would be amazing.
Well, that's what I'm doing, all chef.
It's getting to the point now where it's like I see the notification come up on my phone and I'm now like, it's another fucking Liberator. And then when it's not, I get excited. Like they're no longer like the one, sometimes people, it's like, oh, it's a funny joke. They said you'll get one and it'll be one in every 10. Now it's like 1 in 10 is not a Liberator. And I think the first person to get on board with that was Chumphammer. So eat a sack of dicks, Chumphammer. Thank you for nothing. But also, I love you.
Well, obviously, it's going to be a really fun show today. A suggestion by one of our long-time listeners, one-time caller, Mr. Tomb King Tristan, who said that we should talk about battle plans in Age of Sigmar. Now, obviously, we've done a battle plan review show before, but we're going to do it in a bit more detail today, and then we're going to make some suggestions of battle plans that you would possibly play at tournaments. This is a hark back to a show we did a couple of years ago I think we've done this for every GHB so far. I don't think we've done it for this GHB so far. So we're going to do that and some suggestions. And also, as a part of kind of a meta conversation about what we'd like to do or see in events going forward, or maybe even rethink how events should be, kind of thought about when it comes to putting battle plans together and what that might do. So that's the conversation today. Obviously, news first as well. Before we get into any of that, I should say welcome to everyone in Twitch and wherever else you may be watching from. Mamdare from Party That All points in the chat, as is Tristan. Gursey just subscribed, and Final Cookie. Big Goldfish is here drinking some gin. That's nice. James, you're on your phone apparently.
I am, yeah. I'm just on Twitter tagging Dan.
No.
If you would like proof, you can check Twitter. The last 2 tweets I have said are both to Dan.
First, just to quickly put out there as well, Tomb King Tristan, when we were doing the Soulbound and Down, which will return at some point, I promise, he was the most unreliable party member. Where other party members abandoned the party to let them die or kept getting themselves knocked around. Tristan was the one that regularly either went off mission or would fuck everything up, but then would be the one to turn around and be like, hey guys, I think we need to stay focused on what we're trying to do. And I really connected with that because I'm a heavy procrastinator. And then when I realized that I've pushed it to the absolute limit, I'm like, oh shit, okay, quick. Now look like the one who's in command of things getting done. And that was just the emotional state of the party, and I really appreciated it. He ended up being the de facto leader over a Stormcast Eternal who ate a lot of Skaven spore for some reason. Anyway, unimportant. It was an odd show.
You can't stop those Stormcast Eternals now. Can't stop them. You can't get out of your deployment and you can't stop them. It's the most fun you'll ever have. Yeah? It's the most fun you'll ever have. But big shout out to Speckles in the chat, who did earlier suggest that if you could tank 2 units of 30 Liberators on some ghouls, you could eat them with his Flesh Eater Courts. Which I didn't even know if that was even a thing.
Flesh Eater Court's even an army anymore. I thought they'd taken them out of the game.
No, they're still there. They're still there. You just got some lunatic shouting 5 dragons and just running around. Right, so I'm going to find out how everyone is and how you've been. Nathan, what's been going on? How are you? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. Not done a lot of hobby. I did some reading, actually. I did some more reading of that collection of short stories. That's all.
I know.
Harder to say than it should have been, but there you go. Short stories. I read one of them again that I'd read before. I only realised about halfway through, but there you go.
You're like, this is really familiar. They
Yeah,
just repeat
yeah.
themselves.
Fucking hell, these stories are all the same. Oh, it's the same story. Yeah. No, I've enjoyed them, so that's good. That's about it, though. I've not done a lot of painting. Still plugging away at these little paladors.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Is this because I heard that you're also collecting up to 60 Liberators. Is that correct?
No, I've not got 60 Liberators. I've got 5 Vanguard Hunters. Is that the same?
Basically the same.
Absolutely the same. You know what? Don't even worry about the Liberators. If you got those 5 Vanguard Hunters, your opponents will be quaking in their boots so hard their socks will turn into garter belts.
Yeah, they are quaking. Okay. Were any of the stories ones you loved, Nath? Were you like, yeah, this is the story. This is the one for me?
I did enjoy. They had one with a Stormcast. That was the one that I'd read before, so I enjoyed it twice. It was with the Stormcast that got blasted by a Zinch wizard, and then, but then they had a conversation. And you know how it is in most of the Stormcast stories, they end up meeting the people that were there when they got turned into Stormcast in the beginning, and that was the case again. But it was pretty cool. Got to she got to say how much she admired the way Sigmar was making sure that the Stormcast never rebelled by deleting their memories every time they were reforged.
Oh.
But by keeping one memory, the memory which was why they became a Stormcast in the beginning. So they had to focus. So
Really hard.
Yeah, so she was like, oh, that's quite impressive. And he was like, whatever. And then he hit her with a hammer.
Which is pretty much the emotional state of anyone who takes the new Liberator build. They're basically just like, what are you here to do? Are you here to play Age of Sigmar? Whatever. And then they hit you with a hammer.
Yeah, not very well even. They don't even do very much damage. They're just in the way. It's really annoying. Can I just say massive shout out to Diadrin in the chat, who's just donated 5 gift subscriptions. So if we can send some love to him in the Twitch chat, what an angel.
And he started a hype train.
He started a hype train, which is our second of the day, I just want you to know. And also, Diadrin's particularly happy because Diachasm is obviously out this month, and he's particularly excited about that. His namesake as a game returning. And still makes me laugh. Now, I know a lot of shops and a lot of businesses are closed, so I don't imagine this conversation is going to happen as much as I want. But I still chuckle at the idea of a mum at Christmas thinking, God, my kid's a fucking nerd. I'm going to take him to this shop. He's not going to be a footballer or anything cool, is he? We'll get him in. P.S. I don't think footballers are cool. And then takes him into the shop, and then the shop assistant's like, oh, okay, I've got the game for him. Diachasm. The kid's like screaming, Mum, I love my Diachasm. She's like, I did before you ruined it.
You've been saving that one all day.
Oh, I've been building for that one.
It was just a chasm until you came along, kiddo. And now we had to add the die a bit on the front. I can remember when I first was buying video games and things like that, and this is in the age of Doom and Quake and stuff. I remember going out and I knew I had to get whatever I bought past Mum. Like I knew that to get it into home and into, this is back when you had one computer in the middle of the living room that everyone played. And I found a game and I was like looking at it. I'm like, this is the way to go. This is going to do it. And I got Rayman, like for those who played the original Rayman as cutesy. And I brought it back in. And I remember when Mum was like, oh, so what game did you get? And I was like, Rayman. Before I was like trying to really quickly, I was like, fuck, get it out of the bag. Let her see it. And she's like, Rayman? That sounds violent. And then I'm like, no, look at this. I'm like, it's up. I don't know. He doesn't even have arms or legs. Anyway, so all I imagine is like Diachasm is roughly like that, where it's like, oh no, I'm not getting you that Diachasm. That sounds very violent. Why don't we get you something nice like Friendship is Magic? And then not realizing that Friendship is Magic is probably a whole lot more messed up than Diachasm could ever be.
Thanks, Dad. I really appreciate that whole story.
Yeah, there we go. Just a little side note. So back to the news.
So what was going on there?
Well, we just really where Nathan is. That's what I asked. I asked him how he was. Nathan, I'm glad you're reading. It's positive. Not 100% certain you'll be able to do that forever. So really pleased for you. Listen, I painted myself in a corner today, so I don't know what to do.
You've got no chance.
I'm fucked. James, how have you been? You done any Warhammer? What's been going on, baby?
Yeah, all right. Not done very much. I have painted 13, I think, clan rats this week.
13?
I think
You're
13
getting
clan
into
rats.
Skaven?
I have more Skaven in my house than I know what to do with.
Okay.
So I don't know if I've ever talked about this on the show before. So I have a problem, and if I say this on the show, I'm probably going to get more tweets than Dan. So when someone offers me Warhammer and there's like tons of it, and they're like, "Oh, I brought this, I built it. It's not very expensive. Do you want this?" I'm not. Oh,
I want to hear it, but I just want to say massive thank you to Math
Yeah.
Mallow. Can we get a round of applause for Math Mallow for donating 10 gift subscriptions to the chat? What a babe. Nathan, he's given you a gift subscription.
Thanks.
even better.
Even better. Also, the Falcon's here. Big shout out to the Falcon for being in the chat. And also, this is my favourite bit. Nathan, is this true? Your Twitch handle is Leka69.
Yeah.
This is why you've got a cult, because you don't stop.
Oh, God.
Say what you mean, innit?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Math Mallow, what an angel. You gorgeous boy. Sorry, James, you were saying
Thanks for the sub.
Math
That's
Mallow was
okay.
just being a babe.
So I ended up buying a big bunch of Skaven that I've intended to buy for ages off someone from their house before lockdown. I went to someone's house and brought some. Or no, in the middle of lockdown is probably the better description. And then the other day, someone else sold me some on Twitter. So I now have 2 giant boxes of Skaven. So I thought I'd paint some clan rats. And I think, Gunboat Goat asked what happened to my Lumineth. They're still there. They're still being painted. But they were always supposed to be like a slow grow. I'm going to paint these when I want to paint. And the other day I was like, I feel like I want to paint, but I don't want to spend like an hour putting just the fine line detail on a cloak. So I was like, I've got almost 200 clan rats to paint. I'll paint some of them.
Okay. All right, nice. I've done my clan rat prison sentence already. I'm at 60. I think I'm at 80 painted, so I'm really happy about that. So then it's just toys after that. You can just paint whatever the hell you want. Is there any like big ticket item you fancy painting soon?
I'm going to be painting some bells.
Classic.
And then I think my tree item in Skaven will probably be a Vermin Lord, I think. And maybe a Thanquol, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, no, I really want to do a Plague Furnace. If you listened to the show earlier today, Owen deep dived a Plague Furnace list that's playing at an event recently, and just the ability to prayers obviously are so fun because the other person doesn't get to play with you. You know, you're just praying on your own. You're just like 3 up, living my best life. And then there's a way with the Plague.
Before you go any further,
yeah,
I'd just like to ask, because you said you're praying on your own, how many times in your life have you been like, I know what would make this prayer better. I'll get my friends involved.
It's a good point, actually. Group prayer. It's not something I've ever been a part of. Not knocking it. You know, it's pretty good, but you involve prayer in a lot of things, don't you? Pilgrimage, that's just travel and prayer. That's all that is. No real prayers.
Getting home from King's Cross in Sydney at night, that involves a lot of prayer to get home without being stabbed.
True. Leaving the venue now, going through Nottingham. I obviously pray that no one will get me with some rampant bow crime.
I remember walking. I think I've told this story before. I remember walking back from Bobo to my hotel, and someone very politely but very intensely offered me some illicit drugs, and I was like, "No, thank you." And he was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, pretty sure." So a little bit of prayer there as well.
Best bit was you saw him at the venue the next day.
Yeah, he was playing Vanguard Wing.
It's not called Vanguard Wing, by the way. Dave Fraser has come up with the the name for it. It's actually called the Right Wing, is what it is now, because in order to use it, you've got to own all the libs. So that's the name.
That's awesome.
That's the name of it now.
That's great.
Dan, have you done any Warhammer recently, and have you been okay?
Not in this last week, but I have a glorious 2 weeks off, and I can't wait to get in there. The only thing I'm realizing is that I'm very excited to build and paint, and I haven't actually done any massive amounts of painting since I moved, which is coming up on 2 years. And I realized that at home I had the length and breadth of all of the Games Workshop paints, and I'm one of those people that genuinely prefers them. I realized that if I probably ever used a dropper bottle, I would probably love a dropper bottle more, but I've never known, never missed. I've never used one, so I just love the GW paints. I know them, they're safe, and I enjoy them, and I don't have any of them. I've got like 6 paints and a one-legged duck. So I need to get myself into painting. So that need to go and get out some paints and buy paints and find paints and whatnot, so that I can get there and get painting and start to do some coloring and whatnot. But yeah, that's been it. Please, oh God, no, James, don't share my Twitter handle. I don't need more liberators. I just looked. Oh my God, it's even more now. It was 16. It's now 31 notifications for Twitter.
Perfect. Don't worry. I'll get involved in that later. I've barely begun. I've barely tweeted recently.
But yeah, so no, I'm good. I'm just looking forward to a hot 2 weeks of hobby and probably some games. So yeah, Chump Hammer. We'll throw some dice. Oh no! Oh,
right. So today we're going to talk about the news now, and then we'll get on to the battle plans. So news is pretty massive. Pretty massive. There's 2 major talking points that I would really like to talk about today. Nottingham upon Sprue. Hey everyone, lots of love to you all. Looking forward to some ass grabbery virtual hug. I hope that's the fella from downstairs. You can grab my ass any day. Right, so
I think that may be because we got a review once that was like, it was like good, but there was a lot more grab assing or something, or ass grabbery, than I would have preferred, or it's the kind of ass grabbery. It was basically someone reviewed us and said that that's what we do, and I was like, yeah, cool, fair, that fits. Also, I think you missed that, Rob. That's Restreambot back in the chat. Always good to see you every week, Restreambot.
Dedicated fan.
Yeah, very dedicated. Always here, never misses a show.
Never. Right, so big news. There's two ticket items. There's a reveal information from the weekend, and then there's the Gargant FAQ. Really, the reveal stuff I'd like to talk to all 3 of you about, but we'll start with the Gargant stuff, because specifically I'd really like to talk to Nathan about it, because we kind of had a little chat earlier in the week, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, Nathan. I've been waiting for this all week, actually. Pretty hype. So the Gargant review came out, and there was some really positive changes. Ability to walk over on the spells. The glowy What's-It means that it counts as a wizard, so you can cast and end a spell. All excellent changes, in my opinion. The ability to kick objectives so that they cost different amounts depending on what the definition of the battle plan is excellent. I think that's a fun, good change. I think that's good for Gargants, and that's good for even allying them in, because kicking is still on their war scroll, so even allying them in is cool. So I'm a fan of that. The big ticket item, though, I guess. Nathan, was there any of those that you loved, or like any of those that you didn't love? And also James and Dan, if you got any thoughts on it.
Well, I was surprised about the kicking one. That you could by kicking the objective out of your territory, for example, in
Border War.
Border War, yeah. You change the points value of the objective, so your opponent can never score 4 points on your objective.
Great plan.
So, you know, it's. I was surprised that happened. It's obviously a big bonus for the Gargants, and I think they're becoming quite an interesting army to play as objective holders. They definitely seem to be strong at that. I was very surprised. I think there's about 3 objectives. 3 scenarios, possibly 4, where you, by kicking the objective around, you can mess up what your opponent can do and can't do. I'd say it definitely is a boost for the Gargant army.
Yeah, and more clarity on lots of the stuff. Really, there was again, just like to clarify for me personally, massive fan of all the changes. Think they're all good. They all brought Gargants up a level, which I felt that they needed. So big positives. I still don't think the battle tone was written particularly well, but that's an aside. Good changes as of. Excellent. However, there was one significant change when it comes to competitive Age of Sigmar. It's worth conversing about, and that's for the ability to the Gargants to override scenario special rules. So, like, one of the things we're going to do today is we're going to look at battle plans, and core scoring is actually found in the core rules. If you have the Age of Sigmar app, scoring is found in the core rules for how you score. That's where it describes the fact that it's 6 inches, the fact that you can't have more than one model, claim 2 objectives at once. So, like, if you were to straddle 2 objectives, let's say, and something like Blaze Edge where they're next to each other, if you put a model between them, it can only pick one or the other. So those are where all those things are located. However, then on your battle plan can override some of those things. So if you take something like Places of Arcane Power, it has the ability to. The battle plan changes how you score. What Gargants can do because of this FAQ now is they can flip that back to scoring like you would score normally, which is a bit weird. And then there are a whole bunch of fringe cases, which I won't go into in detail, where you're able to effectively, without even being on an objective, change how people score in that battle plan. So I guess the real question is, Nathan, James, and Dan. Nathan, I'll start with you. Like, what did you think about that particular change? Got any thoughts on it, like wholesale?
Well, yeah. Again, I think that's another big boost for the Gargant players, and again makes them stronger in a couple more of the scenarios. So I think there's some scenarios that the Gargants become pretty. Well, they become a proper force in, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see them in a few team tournaments now, because a lot of team tournaments they'll every round they have a variety of scenarios being played. So part of the matchups is matching your teams into the scenarios that are favorable for them, and the Gargants will be very good at picking out some of those scenarios. They'll be pretty hard to shift, or else they're going to mess up a scoring. So, yeah.
Well, I see. Yeah. So I'll get everyone else's opinion first. Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I see that as well. Initially that didn't jump out at me. I read it and I was like, okay, awesome. This is good. I like that Gargants are so big and so powerful that for me it feels like they're just like, no, I'm not playing that game with you. And they're like, oh, no, but it's leaders capture objectives. Like, no, I'm not playing that game. Why? Because I'm bigger than you and I say we're not. And it's like, okay, yep, fair enough. Good point. Good answer. Yeah. So I dig on it. I really like the FAQ changes there. I think it makes the Kraken Eater an even stronger ally, which is really awesome with the scoring and the kicking and all of that jazz.
That particular scoring is only affected by the allegiance ability, so that doesn't get affected when they get dragged in as an ally. But kicking does.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like the kicking of objectives around and things like that. I think that's really kind of cool. So yeah, I really dug it. I didn't think about that as part of a teams thing, but now that I think about all the teams tournaments I've played in, even the one army that you put out as kind of like a random one that at each pairing you're like either this one maybe needs to take the L for the rest of the team or is just going to be a pain in the ass, like Border War or one of those rocks around and it just kicks its 4-pointer out of the back thing and goes like, I'm going to limit even if you table me how many points you can score. That's a really good strategy now. So yeah, I kind of dig on that. I think that's really awesome.
Okay. All right. James, I'd like to get your opinion on it. And obviously, specifically, this is very important as the head of the merch department. Do you think Games Workshop specifically created this rule so that we couldn't sell any more objective rings? Because kicking them around is going to be frustrating. What are your thoughts?
Hadn't even thought about it. Do you know what? Like, I'm going to go completely off tangent because everyone's talked about probably the things I would. I think, like, when we originally talked about Gargants, the one thing everyone said was they didn't play like we felt they should narratively, and we didn't think they sounded fun to play. Other than you could paint some nice models, throw them at someone, do no damage, and that would be the end of it. And like for me, like it's interesting that they bring some different mechanics to the game because I always think that's fun. But I think so for me, I think in my head, it's almost the wrong army to be like, I'm going to kick an objective, change the score in, but still have to stand on an objective and score it. I'm going to buy 3 giant models and have 3 littler models. I just want to run at someone, hit them, hopefully kill them. That was the game. So kind of cool, but I just, still not. I just don't feel like they're exciting, other than look wise, I guess.
All right, my take on it. So again, all the FAQ great. That specific rule interaction where you can change how scoring is done in that scenario, I think is super negative for the game. I think it's really poor for like the mid tables where you'll explain someone will walk onto Place of Arcane Power, let's say, and they'll be like, my hero's here, and you're like, actually, I'm going to change it to most models, and you're like, all right, like you can do that, can you? Yeah, only me. Only we can do this. This is a super weird fringe case. Or you're playing Scorched Earth, you're like, I'm going to burn this now. It's like, no, I've decided you can't burn it because my rule says like you can just not do that now. And you're like, okay, that seems shit. Like, I
would love to be able to use my rules.
Yeah, well, not even the rules, just the rules of the mission. I think changing core mission rules is super weird. We saw that FAQ'd out when you were able to use like Karis's ability for the priority roll, for example, or use Karis's ability to change how much you would score on a burnt objective or something like that. So there have been fringe cases, and I personally don't think it should really make its way into match play. I don't think Gargants lose out on anything. They've got good heroes for missions where you need heroes. They've got battle line units. They don't not have anything another army has. So it doesn't make any sense why you would include it. It's just a really feel bad situation if used in an event. So personally, like, and for the Super Series, I'm just going to carte blanche say now, I would just FAQ that not working that way. Like, and I would be reticent to watch that go into event packs. That's okay. I think that's a weird one to allow to happen. Like Nate said, they now are only going into missions because they can basically make it so that you can't play the fucking mission. That's a really janky way to put that into a team event. Just be like, oh yeah, we brought the dicks that make things not work. And you're like, okay. Wait, you brought the Rob army? Cell phone, high five. So I would 100% FAQ that, and willing to FAQ that for the Super Series. So that's just my take on it. Okay, on to more fun news. There was a reveal this weekend. Big reveal. James, yeah, you seem like a guy who loves loving things. How do you feel about that?
I did, at my first ever Warhammer World event, win a Slanesh award for Lord of Pleasure.
What?
They award that in a Games Workshop event? Like,
yeah, I've got it. It's in a frame
like
and everything.
Pornhub Awards or something like that?
No, Lord of Pleasure, Slanesh's champion. That's my award.
So you play Slanesh. What do you think about the Mortal Slanesh stuff? You excited?
So I'm not buying it. I've told myself I'm not buying it. But I do think like super cool models were super cool. Those new, not Chaos Warriors, are ace. Like they look really good.
We've decided they're called Sexecutioners.
Okay, so the Sexecutioners, I'm gonna, and this might get me shot by someone. I'm sure.
With a bow or a gun?
Probably with a bow. The ones with the helmets. 10 out of 10, amazing models. Mm-hmm. The ones with the demon heads, those demon heads are awful. And I don't know if it's who's painted them for Games Workshop with the big eyes, but I am not a fan of those demon heads.
Really?
Yeah, not a fan. I saw them, I looked at them, and I was like, those models are amazing. And then I went back and looked again, and I was just like, the demon heads on those models are terrible. Like the rest of them, for me. And I know like when OBR came out, I didn't like them, and loads of people do, and that's cool.
They've got the same expression on their face. That's why those guys and the Mortec Guard and all of those guys that got that same expression on their face. Put them next to each other, and you'll see.
They're really, really ugly. Those ones.
Go on, you've got a point, James. Carry on.
I'm just not a fan, but however, that Sigval model is amazing.
Okay, all right, interesting. Yeah, like done in non-metallic metal as well, which I think is a great conversation. Dan, I was going to ask your opinion on the new Mortal Slanesh stuff, specifically because if you look at the Sexecutioners, they've got a particularly large hat, and we know that you love a good elven large hat. So...
yeah, no, but I prefer mine with bull's horns on it. I loved all of it, to be honest. I to start with Fulgrim, spectacular. Not Fulgrim, sorry. What's his nuggets?
Sigvald.
Sigvald.
Oh, you didn't even get his name right.
Didn't even
He's
get
the
his name right.
prettiest man in Warhammer.
Yeah, well, he was. Some horrifying things happened to him.
He was into it.
I love to hate him. Like
Not in the story, he wasn't. He was crying.
Yeah, I love to hate him. I thought he was a really awesome character. I always wanted to play a Chaos Army to have it led by him, and I ended up buying and building and painting his model, and I've used it for conversions more times than I can count, because I just think it was such a cool model to play around with. And so seeing him come back was really awesome. I looked at it, I was like, oh, that's a cool model. I feel like maybe there was a couple of missed little elements there. For those who don't remember how he died in the old world, he was fighting Krell, and Krell cut his face a little bit, as in Krell the is now the black, whatever his name is, with the
White
big
King.
axe. The White King with the big axe. Yeah, so that was that model, that character, cut his face a little bit, and he went ballistic and punched Krell to death, well, death again, with his bare hands, and then stopped and looked at his hands that were, like, now, because he'd just been punching with bare hands on, like, metal and bone, were, like, shattered and broken down to the stumps. And he was like, oh, God. And meanwhile, at the start of that battle, Archaon, to kind of punish him, had lumped him and the Troll King in the same area of the battle, because he was like, this will be funny. This will be funny. I'm going to make the really pretty guy have to deal with the ugliest, stinkiest critter in Warhammer. And he'd said some mean things about the Troll King. And so the Troll King walked along, and there's Fulgrim, Sigvald, looking at himself. His face is sliced up, his hands are broken, and he's like, I'm not beautiful anymore. And then the Trog King came and smashed his head open to kill him, and then peed on his corpse. And so I just feel like that model could have had any one of those elements on it, just to remind us of that horrifying end. Maybe a little slice down the middle of his face, so it's not quite as perfect. Maybe his hands are a little bit messed up. Maybe he's covered in pee. Who knows? One of
You
those
can do that with your model. Just tip some tip some Nurgle right over him.
Which means it begs the question: what color is Trog piss? That's the question that we're going.
That is a great question. Please leave that in the YouTube comments. Love to know.
Or write us a story on it.
Yes. Next week's story: how someone discovered the color of that.
So yeah, I dug. I think that model's amazing. I think the Sexecutioners are amazing, and I'm actually going to disagree. I know that their faces are a little bit janky, but I love those kind of the like mortals that have given their bodies to lesser demons, and they're all twisted. I really enjoyed that, because they looked like something from a Mad Max film, or they looked really messed up, and that's what I got from it, and I enjoyed that. So I have given
They're so ugly.
I have given Slaanesh a lot of stick for a long time. And I saw that and I was like, oh, between using that to replace some of the models on chariots and things, I was like, suddenly I might be excited to do a Slaanesh mortal army. And I feel dirty saying that, but it may very well happen. I always have dug mortal Slaanesh.
Can I ask you a question? Just quickly before we go on, Rob.
Yeah. Sure.
Just to Dan. Doesn't Slaanesh cover and love elves?
It does.
Didn't we say something about moving on?
Okay, moving on. Moving on. I'll leave that for the chat.
I tell you what, I feel like the Executioners. Now we talked about it. Oh no, Lex Pescador. Thanks for that. One of the things that I think would look really good is if you took some old school Executioners and you replaced the Executioners helmets, which I think are dumb. The rest of the outfit's great, and you put old school Executioner heads on them. I think you'd end up with a really beautiful model, which I think is fun. There's also a whole range of models we saw in the background of some of those images. There's some large models. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that we've seen in the background. So it does feel like it's going to be a full release. So a whole battle tome come in at some point. Whether or not that comes in Broken Realms or comes its own battle tome, I'm pretty set in stone in my head that it's a full battle tome. So yeah, it looks really fun. Nathan, what are your thoughts when you saw them?
Yeah, they look alright. Look fine. Be interested. I mean, obviously not my cup of tea, being chaos, and being troll fodder, really. So yeah, I'm looking forward to my trolls chopping them up and pissing on them again.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's interesting, and I'm going to say this, so I'll get some flack. But
Ooh.
I still think that the worst bit about this release
Yes,
is
sir.
they've obviously shown us some models.
Yes, sir.
You can like or hate them, but they're pretty
Okay.
in some ways.
I'm with you.
They're new,
I'm
they're
with you.
exciting, they're well designed. There's obviously more to come.
Praise it, for brother.
Incoming is a brand new box set. None of these models are included.
But we already had the box set, right? We already had the box set just gone with our
Yeah, but
special.
it's dumb.
Yeah, it's done. It's true. It's true.
I don't understand. They even do what they did with the bloody starter sets, where they put not enough in, like when they put three, like
Oh, I
8
remember that.
sequiturs in,
Retributors or something.
and 3 retributors or 3 evocators, but like, just put 1 in. Get me excited.
There is one.
that's-
that
it's
model just
Slanesh.
gone.
It's
I get-
Slanesh. Saying
it's
like
one
the first
stupid
taste
hero.
is free to get you addicted is literally bread and butter Slanesh.
Exactly. Stupid. Annoying.
All right.
Run
Well,
over.
So, I mean, some fun news, loads of exciting times, and like considering
Yeah.
we've just come off the back of, it's nice getting the Gargant FAQ, like whatever the situation, however it's landed. That's excellent. Can't wait for that Liberator FAQ. Not long now, 3 weeks to go. Let's go, baby. Like, we're voting with our feet. That's the plan. Big shout out to Math Mallow in the chat who donated some stuff, but we also know he had to play that Liberator army recently. No, not fun. I played it. Not the funnest, but it happens. Okay, right. I think that's all the news, unless any of you have got any news that's outstanding that I don't know about.
That Treebeard model was pretty cool, but I know that's Lord of the Rings. But that was
It is a
to
cool
me,
model.
That was
It is a cool model.
That was a stunning model in that
Mhm.
release.
It's
Yeah.
almost as good as that Blood Bowl tree with the squirrel. Not quite as
Oh
good.
yeah, he's
Much
great.
better tree. Just the
Yeah,
best
there are
tree.
Some great
Also a
trees
great
out
tree.
there.
Talking about Blood Bowl, if you guys are interested, if you want to join me in the stream streak on Thursday, we've got one of the NAF refs who's been on the show before. Brilliant fella who the day before Blood Bowl release is going to be taking us through everything and what it all means and explaining it to me as a noob. So that'll be a really fun day. Go on,
Just
James.
because you're talking about it, like every time I'm like, brought a Blood Bowl set, had one years ago. Every time I play it, I'm like, this just hurts my brain. And then every time I look at the models, I'm like, but they're all so pretty.
Hurt my brain, please.
Yeah. It does hurt your brain, but he is incredible. Very excited for having him on Thursday. He's gonna like the guys in the chat when he was last on. We were all just kind of sat there enamored. It was just like I was like, so tell me about Blood Bowl. And like an hour and 20 minutes later, I was like, well, it's been really nice to have him on the show. Thanks very much. Like I just did nothing else. It was an easy day at the mill for me. Forgive us asked a question before we do move on. Have we got any questions before we move on to the main subject? Do you beautiful people have any speculation on how winter will come for our Lord Kronk? I think he means Croak.
No, I think
definitely.
Kronk is his actual name. I'm pretty sure we've been pronouncing it wrong this entire time. It's
Yeah,
it's the Kronk. It's the Kronknado.
So I think specifically he's asking because if you aren't aware, rampant speculation time. In the next 6 to 8 weeks, we'll be getting the Winter FAQ, which is where we get points changes for the Age of Sigmar units. We don't often see rules changes, but we have seen rules changes in the past during the Winter FAQ. Last winter, we got the Slanesh FAQ, changing them from a 2-up to 3-up locus, which apparently meant they were never going to work again.
And the summoning points changed.
Yeah, I know, but cowards, they're like, oh, I can't roll a 3-up. 2-up, I was fine with, but 3-up, it's completely not worth it. So I guess you guys got any thoughts or feelings about this before we, like anything you think needs to go up or should go up? Personally, I think Croak should go down 220. That's what I'm saying. Let's get him down there.
Sentinels will go up, or they should go up at least.
Mm-hmm.
I realize with my new position of elf enthusiast, I shouldn't be saying that, but personally, I don't want to see them. I want to see people be more creative with that army, so I would like them to go up. Eels should also hopefully go up, or something that would help with tying down eels would be if what's his name that pops up on the side of the board, if he went up.
Volty?
Soulscryer.
Soulscryer. Yeah, if the Soulscryer, that would also help, because usually it's the 1-2 punch of my eels are off the board and also they're going to have +3 to charge on the turn they come in. That really for me is the killer.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think Skinks going up would be a big positive for anyone. Actual points for Kane Knight Shadowstalkers. Have we still not got points for them?
No.
What the fuck? Oh, brilliant. That's really fun.
Hello Lex wants Alariel to go up, and I think that's fair. She's broken at the moment. Way too OP.
Everything will actually go up or down by 20 to 30 points, and it won't change much. I'll be amazed. If they rewrite rules, I'll be amazed, because no one's even playing at the minute. So
Yeah,
that's true.
And they didn't change the Slanesh points for what, like 9 months? So we've got...
Oh, go on, James, sorry.
I was going to say, we've just got, what, another at least 4 months of Craig being really expensive for his points.
Too expensive, arguably. Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Have they done any points for or any rules for that brewmaster guy yet? No.
No, not rules even, brother. Not even rules.
He has.
He's got rules for Warcry.
In Warcry,
Yeah,
fuck off, James.
Getting rules for the best game that Games Workshop make at the minute.
Fuck off to Warcry Town.
They released the new Bugman model, and they don't even release rules for him in the main game.
No. You can play him with Warcry, though, which
you can play Warcry in a pub, though. Maybe that's why.
You can play Warcry in a pub with groups of 6 people from your household and no one else. I'd
like to see someone play an actual game of Warhammer in a pub. Like, just push a bunch of tables together, roll out a 6x4 and be like, but I am buying drinks.
It was never a 6x4, but back in Sydney, I remember seeing a lot of Pub Hammer played with Underworlds, and it was a great fun. There was a pub next to Warhammer Sydney, and we'd roll in there, and boards would be set up and games would be played. It was good fun.
I personally think we should do, like, effectively, when post-COVID, we should do, like, a pub takeover where we all organise to go to a pub, all of us, at, like, 6 p.m. when it's quiet, and they're like, oh, fucking busy now, and then everyone just rolls their armies out, orders some pints, and everyone's like, what the fuck? Like, like a flash mob, but a Warhammer mob.
There's the D3 Mortal Wounds crew as well. They used to have a pub that they pretty much took over the entire floor of, and the amount of beers that were drunk, like you'd walk through the tables and you'd be like, oh wow, some awesome games going on, and just the piles of empty beer glasses beside them were impressive. Like, you'd be like, wow, okay, these guys, did they come here to drink or play? And it was really hard to tell the difference. And I know a lot of battles never reached the end because they got to the point where they're like, it's just beer at this point. That's what we came here for. And I'm like, I feel that on a spiritual level.
Okay, so no, I don't. We won't have any idea. James's point about there not being loads of games or data out there is super solid. It's going to be an interesting time, whether or not we do get anything at all. And I guess really the main point is we want Liberators to get cheaper. I think is the key play. That's what we want. Cheaper, so much cheaper. Or my pocket pick, Vanguard Hunters with Hurricane Crossbows. You can only do 35 wounds against a 4-up save. Like with them, or just 70 wound dice, in one shooting.
Are you trying to make me drink before midday again, Rob? Is that your goal right now?
It's just a fun time for all down at the yard. It's because that's my new way of approaching it now. I don't be so upset about it. I'm just like, life's life, and we can all have a great time.
Life's life. Yeah.
You're making my day making Lord Kronk canon today. That's fine. Let's do that. Lord Kronk is now his new name.
Kronk.
All right, so let's talk about battle plans, right? So Tristan in the chat, big shout out to him, and shout out to everyone who's joined us so far. Suggested that we talk about battle plans because a couple of years ago, or maybe I don't know how many times we've done it, but basically whenever a GHB comes out, normally, but because of COVID, I don't think we did it this year. When we look at the battle plans, we also suggest some sort of tournament packs or designs. And now it's taken on a new bent for me personally. Having written stuff for the Super Series, I feel quite invested in this stuff. And also looking at tournaments wholesale, I feel quite invested in producing tournament packs and where I might and how I might myself in the future organise these. And so there's loads to unpack here. So we're only going to be looking at the stuff from the GHB 2020. There's obviously stuff from the old book, but this is more geared towards the idea that you've just got your GHB 2020, you don't need anything else, you've got your 12 battle plans, and we're going to break them down. We're going to look at the battle plans in order, and then we're going to discuss them. And we're going to add some criteria for how we're going to talk about them, specifically whether or not they're good for putting in a tournament pack. But good's quite a nebulous term, isn't it? What the fuck do you mean by good? I guess really what I mean by good, and maybe how we'll go through this if you guys are okay with it, is any of the battle plans are good to play in a tournament or to play at home with your mates. They're fine, yeah? Like, they work, they're functional, they're fine. However, when you want to produce maybe a balanced event, or as balanced as possible based on the battle plans, and by that, you give everyone the opportunity to play, you need to start to really talk about them. So one of those things we'll talk about, let's say, is focal points. Focal points is you get a bonus point for every behemoth and monster in your army that's near an objective. So that's really good if there's lots of monsters generally in the meta. So maybe you would include it in your pack. If there wasn't lots of monsters, you wanted them to be included. But it doesn't really work that way, because it feels like a lot of the armies that are good irregardless of what battle plans exist, if that makes sense. Yeah, and some of them just get skewed even better by some of the battle plans. So really what we want to do is make some of the worst performing armies in the game, Nighthaunt, Beast of Chaos, Sylvaneth, etc. Yeah, exactly, yeah, all of those guys. We want those guys to be able to compete with some of the best performing armies, so Kharadron Overlords, Seraphon, Tzeentch, Liberators, and that's a whole army now. And
It's just, what do you play? Liberators. Yeah, but what? I play Liberators. Say no more.
yeah. So Beast of Chaos are OP. That's only if you're taking 16 cocks, and that's you, baby. So that's going to be the conversation, right? What we're looking is some sort of parity, and even Gits to a degree. Nathan, no offense. One of the things about this, I agreed. One of the things that it's fair to say about Gits is they don't have like super survivable characters, unless you then go into an Ragnarok. Scraggy's okay for surviving, but not really. And so that's But then Gits is having to take an Ragnarok just so they can play one hero mission is weird. So, a lot of it's to do with also army composition, how you can build your armies. If that makes sense. Did I explain that well enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, does that make sense?
I think I gotcha.
Gotcha.
Except
gotcha,
for the
quatcha.
Gits, but yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I didn't even agree with myself, if that helps you. All right. So before we talk about anything else, we'll talk about scoring. That's the important part. So for new people that need to hear about scoring. Scoring happens at the end of each player's turn. You must check to see if either player has gained control of any objectives. To do so, you and your opponent must count up the number of models you have within 6 inches of the center of each objective. You gain control of an objective where your count is higher than your opponent's count. Once you gain control of the objective, it remains under your control until the enemy is able to gain control of it. So you can control it, and you can leave with no one on it because it's still yours, right? Basically, so that's something to always remind in your keep in your head. A model can only be counted towards gaining control of one objective per turn. So again, if you've got a monster between two, so he's got a big base, you can only count him towards one or the other one. If one of your models could be counted towards gaining more, you must pick which one they're counted towards. So it's super simple, but this is pretty much the defining paragraph of our entire game. This is how it works. The 6 inch objective, you've got to get a load of lads, whether or not, unless you're playing Gargants and more tribes. You've got to get a load of lads.
Just need one lad.
Yeah.
One chunkster
Or
on the objective.
Daughters of Cain.
Yes, true. You need a bunch of
No
chunky...
lads.
No lads.
No lads.
Some lads. They're just real pale lads. They've had the life
Those aren't
drained out of them.
lads. They're not
They
lads.
are.
Whoop.
What, you don't think they're lads?
They don't. I don't think most lads would admit them into their lads group.
Well, listen, this is my thoughts on the Doomfire Warlocks that Nathan's talking about specifically. They're painted very pale, and this is all I've got to say. If there was hundreds of blood-crazed women in stilettos, wanting to get their jollies off, and you're one of the only 5 lads in the temple, you must be knackered. No wonder they're so fucking pale. They got nothing left. They need a banana and a fucking protein shake.
They're probably all anemic because they're just constantly being bled. It's like, what do you need? We need some blood. Where do we get it from? And then everyone just looks at them and they're like, so yeah, that's probably they've probably got liver issues at this point in time from lack of blood.
Anyway, so holding objectives, when you guys write lists, James, Nathan, Dan, James, I'll ask you first. When you write lists, are you conscious of having enough bodies on the board to control objectives?
Always. I think for me, like that was one of the big things. So for the last couple of years, I probably played like high model count armies, and then started building Lumineth lists, and you very quickly realize you're probably only going to have like 30 to 40 models on the board, especially if you take tech lists. I think that's really interesting. So at the minute, the two lists that I'm kind of playing around with, there's a Lumineth list which doesn't have many bodies, but everyone's important. And then there's a Skaven list which has more bodies than most people would want to deal with, and no one's important. And I think almost for me, those are the two ways that I probably end up playing. The more bodies being the way I prefer to play.
Okay. All right, Dan, what about you? What are you thinking?
I prefer to make kind of a toolbox list, so I don't necessarily think about the battle plans, but I definitely look at them and try to create lists that'll score on everything, or that are balanced and have tools to deal with things. I might have one particular unit of, say, if I'm building a cities list like Iron Drakes that are really quite punchy when it comes to damage, but I'll be thinking about the battle plan and the army in general and where it falls down, like where it's weakest, and what I need to do to make sure that doesn't get taken advantage of as well.
Okay, yeah, no, I think it's led to a whole bunch of stuff. And Nathan, I'd like to hear what you got to say as well. One of the things that's obvious is like the inclusion of monsters is rarer because it's usually just a single model. I don't think I'd hate the idea of all monsters getting count as 10 models, let's say. Or behemoths, or the behemoth battlefield role maybe counts as 10 models. I'm not sure, but I think that's why we don't see them included as much. Nathan, you got any thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah. When I build a list, I do try and include a monster because of focal points and playing gets. Or even when I play my cities list, I try and make sure I've got quite a few heroes to compensate for the fact that they're probably not the most survivable. So definitely on my gets lists, I do tend to have at least 5, sometimes 6 heroes. So
do you feel that you then have to take a lot of heroes specifically because of the battle plans that might be in effect?
Yes, yeah. I do feel that unless I'm taking a hero, like sometimes I'll be playing the Loon Boss on Manglasquick, and then in that case, I'm a little bit happier to drop the number of heroes because he's got quite a few wounds and he's got 4-up save. So as far as the Git hero goes, he's like fucking a tank.
Nails.
Yeah,
he's like so hard.
They can't even touch him.
Yeah. So, much like James has said, I prefer playing armies with lots of bodies. Obviously with the gets lists, just for the objective scoring, really.
And that leads to loads of other conversations as well, right? MSU is another example because it's not necessarily lots and lots of bodies, or sometimes it is, but it's lots of units that are able to score in different ways, run onto something. Like I find that's one of the weaknesses of the list that I write quite often, is that I generally tend to go for larger blocks. I still have a lot of bodies, but I don't have a lot of utility in smaller little 5-man units. Like I've said this before on the show, like I'll play Nathan, he'll just have I've got 5 lads. I'm like, 5 lads? What are you going to do with 5 lads? He's just like, they're going to do something. I'm like, fucking 5 lads, and they're going to do nothing. And then later on, those 5 lads run onto an objective as my 30 block are like trying to fucking kick the shit out of some orcs or something. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that's what they're there for.
That's what those 5 lads do. Yeah.
That's what those 5 lads do. So there's loads to unpack, and that small paragraph really is, in my opinion, a beautiful paragraph because it's designed this really elegant game for us to play through the battle plans. However, there are some considerations, obviously monsters, bodies, things on the board. Okay.
I will say that I usually like, depending on the army, like for instance, more tribes, putting mixed destruction before it, putting a monster like a Stonehorn or something in there often is a really powerful thing, like either to draw your opponent's attention or something that like monsters often can go and do something by themselves. Like they don't need lots and lots of overlapping buffs and support. So they can be nice in that way, but normally I would tend to avoid them in favor of more units and more cohesion, I guess.
Yeah. See, and then really it's how that general strategy ties into each army, which is like, while I have been at times a fan, I think, of some missions that like skew it around, I think this GHB is unique because we've got battlefield roles giving you more bonus points or whatever it might be, or that, you know, previously in other editions we had a bunch of hero missions which you were like, okay, that's a good balancer at an event because of hero missions or whatever it might be, but actually as we go through, I actually don't think that's the case anymore. So in the GHB 2020, there are 12 battle plans. Just a quick overview. The only one that's got 2 objectives is Knife to the Heart. 3 objectives is Star Trike, Shifting Objectives, Place of Arcane Power. 4 objectives, Total Conquest, Battle for the Past, Total Commitment. 5 objectives, Focal Points. 6 objectives is Better Part of Valor, Blade's Edge, and Force in the Hand. Both of those are 2 new ones. And then 8 objectives is Scorched Earth. Little side note, that 5 of the battle plans, you end up you start off 24 inches apart. 6 of them you start 18 inches apart. So we generally, like, over half, you're going to start 18 inches apart. Or half, sorry. And then one of them, because Games Workshop can't really do trigonometry well, and I had to ask Nathan about it, one of them you start 22.7 inches apart. That's a different conversation for another time. That's because in that particular battle plan they describe you as starting you start wholly within your territory, and the territories are just 22.7 inches apart. I know that's weird, but you know, you could ignore it. Alright, should we talk about the battle plans?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through them in the order I've got them. I didn't put them in any particularly cool order. So let me just put these up for you. We're going to start off with Knife to the Heart, which is a pretty simple one. So I'm just going to tell everyone what they do and then ask you guys really how you feel about them. Knife to the Heart has got 2 objectives. You start... that's not the one that's on the screen. Sorry, guys, I just need to change that over for you. Nath, do you want to tell us how you win Knife to the Heart? Because I know you know this off the top of your head.
I do. This is the one where there's 2 objectives. And you've got to go and take... So it's from battle round 3, I think it is. If you control both objectives, you win the game. And most of the time, you have to have at least 5 models when you're controlling the objective.
Yes, so it's actually starting from the 3rd battle round. If a player holds both objectives, they auto-win, is the thing. This is one of the ones the Gargant's new special weird rule can fuck with, where you need 5 models to claim the objective. Now you can just do it with 1. You can say no, you just claim it 1 Mega Gargant. But then also, that means you don't then... I don't think you... I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the unique one.
Would your opponent then also be able to win with 1? Because you're changing the...
No, because they don't have mightier as rightier. Really.
Okay.
Yeah. It only changes it for you.
Well, no, they can change it. So effectively, just to clarify that quickly, they at the end of every turn when you decide how to score, that's when mightier and right tier comes into effect, if you want it to. So in their turn, yes. In your turn, they can just go, no. So, really shit. Anyway, we'll ignore the Gargants really for this, because personally I'll just FAQ it out. Right,
the Gargants, they just have that rule. I do what I want. You're like, yeah, that's right. I forgot you had that one.
Yeah, that sucks. Anyway, but I really... Now, I know a lot of people don't like this battle plan, but me personally, I love this battle plan because it's super simple, it's really obvious, and I think one of the things that I love most about this battle plan is it doesn't benefit anyone. If you're an Alpha Strike army, kind of makes sense, but you're not going to score until turn 3, you know, so you've got, like, maybe you'll commit super hard super early, but, you know, no one's got to spread themselves out. If you're an army that likes to castle up, it works really well for you, but you might struggle to go across the board. You know, if you're a Deep Strike army, that's fine, but you can't, like, move around the board much because you're still only going to one fucking place, and they know that. So this is a game where 2 players know exactly what the deal is from turn 1. They're like, you want to come here and I want to go there. It's like, yes. And it's just an old Texan shoot 'em up. I don't know if that's a thing. You know, you're just eyeballing each other across the room for as long as you want. Some people say that they don't like this because, you know, like, it leads to a minor, or people don't put their their balls on the table and go for it. But actually, you can't win an event if you don't go for that normally. If there's enough players.
And you've got your balls on the table. But the thing to note about this one is also that the end of the second half of turn 2 is very important, because if you can end turn 2 controlling both of those objectives, you win, because at the start of battle round 3 you control both the objectives. So
yeah, there's a definite strategy there, isn't there? Going in and then trying to flip it at that point. However, like, as the opposing player, that's the plan.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody probably wants to go into turn 2, take in the second half, so giving the turn away if you can, really.
Yeah.
I love this. I know a lot of people don't like it. I like it in a tournament pack. And like you say, you've got to win it to get it, but I like to see it early. That's all. Is that, like, sometimes by the end, my biggest pet hate at tournaments is when people game it and they work out, oh, well, all I need is a minor or a draw and I win either way. I'm like, no, shut up. Like, I don't want to know that. I want to go into all my games playing for all the biscuits. But when I do notice that when this is late, that's when you get that people don't put their balls on the table kind of attitude, where they just avoid what it is, because they're like, well, if we draw, this is where we sit. So that's why for me, I like it. I just like to see it early to mid in the pack, not towards the end.
I don't know if it matters when it goes inside of a pack ultimately, like, but maybe it's more important at the end. That makes sense, because you're vying for the potential to win the event. I've seen thrilling games in tournament coverage watching this battle plan, and whether or not, like, this is a particularly fun one for you and your opponent to play as, like, or you and your mate to play at home, I think this is like an absolutely top tier competitive battle plan for an event. I think it balances out all the armies, because there's no real advantage anywhere in any situation. Not that they don't get in any other battle plan, and it really rewards, like, it. If you got, I just think it's really good. I think it's really, really, really strong. And I really, really like it. So,
well, it's the ultimate balance. You're balancing how hard you can and how much how many resources you can invest in attacking your opponent versus keeping yourself safe. And I kind of like that. It's almost like a resource management game in a way, because I've definitely played it where I'm like, cool, and I've invested too hard too early in softening up my opponent. And I'm like, great, I've got them to a point where I could quite easily push onto their objective, but I'm like, oh, but I've exhausted way too many of my resources. I can't actually win this game anymore. And I think it's really interesting for that reason.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. And also the concept that people might, like, handshake and draw, like, on this battle plan, whatever. Like, if that argument's coming into your thinking, then probably just don't, like, let those people beat your event. Just tell them to fuck off. So, like, it's just a real simple fucking conversation. Those two agreed to a draw. Well, just disqualify them and tell them to fuck off. It's real easy.
Yeah.
Anyone else got any other thoughts on this? For me, I think this is an excellent battle plan to put in a tournament pack. Really pro.
It's one of my favourites.
Okay, good. All right, yeah.
I just think it's just exciting, isn't it? And I love, my favourite thing about this one is, I guess there's been years where I've played an army that turtled, and there's years where I've played an army that ran forward, and I was like, right, I get this on turn 2 or I'm done. Like, turn 2 or bust. And I think it's really good fun for that. And my other favourite is that when you finish this game early and you walk around an event and you're like, oh, no one's moved yet. Boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thoughts. I'd love everyone's thoughts in the chat as we go through these. So, like, I'd love your opinions as well. O'Reaper says it's the ultimate snipe battle plan, can be War Machine heavy, which I think is an interesting take. Wonka says he thinks it favors Death Star's castle armies though, but you still have to go across the board, I guess. Like Dan said, you have to hold and take, which is always been a fan of this. Okay, next up is Total Conquest. So there's the map on the screen for everybody. So you start 18 inches apart. There are 4 objectives, 2 in no man's land, 1 in each of your territories. You get 1 VP so you 1 victory point for each objective you hold. You got 1 VP for each objective taken off an enemy that turn. So if they're holding it and you take it off them, you score an additional bonus victory point, and there's 1 VP for each leader within 6 inches of an objective. Dan, you played this before. What do you think? Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a fan. I think it's good. The only thing that I don't love is leader. I guess I'm torn because having played Dispossessed for a very long time and only recently opening up my eyes to the world of Cities of Sigmar, and recently I mean in the last year or two, but I always had 5 wound heroes, so it was very easy for, if my opponent had strong shooting or magic or mortal wound output, to just pop off my heroes and take away my ability to score heavily in a mission. So that always flags as me as something a little bit more concerning versus, say, Battle Line, where it's a lot easier to invest heavily in protected or like high amounts of Battle Line than it is in high amounts of leaders for some armies. However, I dig this one. I kind of like that it's simple and straightforward, and it asks you to play across the board, which I love battle plans that force that, rather than just the only issue with Knife to the Heart, rather to get around to what I'm saying, Knife to the Heart, it's almost like a straight shot. And maybe you flank to try and get around the sides, but really you could draw a line between the 2 objectives and say the majority of the battle, the majority of the game happens along this line. Whereas this one, you're asking to play across all 4 corners of the board, and I really dig it for that reason, because you've got to spread. You can't just focus in on one spot.
Yeah, so one of the conversations in the chat is this amazing score mechanic allows you to come back if you're behind early. That does make sense against armies that generally want to alpha up, which we don't see as much as we used to. There were a bunch of really strong alpha armies. Sylvaneth at one time were like a big, strong alpha army. So that's an army that strikes first really hard and tries to incapacitate you so you can fight back, just in case you didn't know. And then, and I guess there are some. I don't know if there are any strong alpha armies now. I think the game, there was Slaanesh was obviously also a strong alpha army, is one in my opinion. Now I think the game is very much, a lot of the top tier armies are giving you the first turn. They're giving you the first turn, and then you're in this really tough position. Like Seraphon, Change Host, a bunch of different armies are going to be able to push you back off those objectives. So in this particular battle plan, like you're not going to just leave those 2 in no man's land, but you kind of have to, because if you push yourself into those in no man's land, so the 2 objectives, then you've got some very strong counterattack coming from a lot of the top tier armies might be able to push you up quite heavy. So I think there's something to be said there that I don't think the meta itself specifically works towards this at the moment. It's a bit cat and mouse. Nathan, you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, so they score 1 extra point. So effectively, they're just catching up to where you were before. Mm-hmm. So it does mean if you can take them and hold them for an extra turn, knowing that probably the following turn you'll get pushed off, it still works out in your favor. But yeah, it's. I've not played this version of it, the new 2020 version, which has got the extra leader thing, I think. That's so I can't really speak from experience, but I do think it looks like it's very interesting the way you play. The setup's a bit weird though, isn't it? Where you set up in the corners and then you'll have like a big circle cut out of a big quadrant cut out of the corner. In the middle, because you set up 9 away from the enemy territory as well, so you are pretty close. It's an interesting one. Yeah, I'd like to play it really to have a bit more of a say about it, but I think it looks interesting, and I think it'll be a bit of a brain tease trying to work out whether it's worth going for an objective or not. If you got the chance,
but it's quite a simple one, isn't it? Like it's not overly complex. Like
no, but it's whether you decide is it worth you going for that objective if you're not actually going to be points up by having it this turn. So then, obviously, you would have lost whatever resources you've put onto the objective. You could have lost those resources. So sometimes it's not worth investing that until you can counter attack. So it's you've got those decisions, haven't you? So yeah. So I think it's a good battle plan in that it's a proper tricky one.
Well, and that brings up a really great conversation. Thanks, Nath. About like, again, quantitatively, like what makes something good, a battle plan that's good. And I think also Reaper's brought this up in the chat as well. This lets you play unit trade game on side objectives, which is fun. I do think a battle plan that has more decision points, we'll get to this more in a bit, like has more decision points, is normally more fun. Like, it's normally more engaging. Like, you know, instead of like straight shot, we're just going to do this one thing. It's normally more engaging for players. I would say that's obviously just a blanket statement that doesn't necessarily mean it's true. That's just a kind of feeling I have. I don't know if you guys would agree with that.
I would agree. I'd also say that I think this is a battle plan where better players stand a better chance of winning. And it's less down to like some lucky dice rolls and stuff like that happening. I think playing some good play will put you in a stronger position, and so it takes out some of the luck that there is in all games.
Agreed. Big shout out to John Thompson for donating £5 to the show. Sorry, Dan. After you.
Ooh,
big love. Thanks, bud.
No, I was just going to say I really like this one because it does make you think. Like, I often give away the first turn hoping that my opponent will take the objectives, because I'm like, even if you score them with a leader, I'm going to go up by 1 point on each of those objectives if I score them with a leader back the next turn. Or then there've been other games where I've been made to go first and I'll set up just outside of scoring range of those two, the side objectives, so that either my opponent scores them because they're like, okay, well, I need to get points on the board. Or if they don't, in my next turn, I can build a really solid defensive wall around them and score them rather than take them early and lose them to my opponent who then scores back. I just think that there's so many awesome gameplay elements to be thinking about with this one, and that's why it really kind of it jumps out at me. I dig it. I love it. I think it's a good one for that reason.
Okay, good. I think we've done good on that one there. I think there's a lot of statements. Mamdare, big love to you, saying in the chat, when I was talking about Alpha Strike armies, I was talking about KO. There's definitely the KO build with the Ziflin with the bottle. Personally, I don't really see that as the KO build. I very much think about Mr. AOS Tubbsy over in New Zealand. I feel like his KO build is the KO build I have in my head as it's not the archetypal build, but I think it's the more pro build. No offense to any KO dudes who are just running around dropping fucking warp lightning vortexes to their heart's content on units. I love you. I think that'll see its day at some point. I really do.
That poor warp lightning vortex.
I know. How dare I? Right. So this is the next one. I actually am really excited about talking about. Star Strike. Okay. So it's 3 objectives. They're 24 inch. You start 24 inches apart from each other. At the start, there are no objectives on turn 1. At the start of battle round 2, you put down 1 objective. At the start of battle round 3, you put down 2 objectives. And then you score victory points equal to the battle round number. Now, this is, as you can see from the map, and if you aren't aware from the last GHB, there was a weird spread. Like, it could be like in 1 to 12 places. In this situation now, it can only be in 1 of 3 places where they land. I think that's right. Yeah, it doesn't land on the edge, does it? So it's in 1 of 3 places. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like Star Strike. And actually, I was coming into this conversation yesterday with pretty much like random is bad for gaming, so I'm against it. And when we talk about shifted objectives, I'm going to make the same conversation. However, I do think there's something really positive to say about Star Strike, which got brought up to me yesterday by Adam, so I want to say thank him a load for this, which was that it's the VP equal to the battle round number. So the criticism is you don't know where it's going to land. Okay, well actually it's going to land super centrally. Oh, thank you to Crandalista for donating £3.75 to the show. Cheers, bud. That's lovely of you. You guys are great. That's lovely. So it can only land in 1 of 3 places, and they're super central now. Like, they're super central. They're all contained within a 36-inch range on the in the center of the board. So you're in a really good spot for where they're going to land, as opposed to in the past where they were everywhere. Yeah,
Yep.
and the first one obviously lands centrally at the start of Battle Round 2. So I think there's something to be said about giving the first turn away going into priority for turn 2, because I think that's interesting because you're not pushing. But the VP equal to the Battle Round number is the one that I really, 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 really liked as a conversation. Because actually, if you've got armies that start really strong, yeah, like let's say they're big alpha armies, or they're armies that like they work by doing loads of damage over time. I'm thinking about maybe like Change Host, or like, you know, like something like KO who's going to hit you super fast early, let's say, as an example, right? They get nothing from starting so aggro so early. However, if you can just hold on to the bitter end with that little cheeky 5-man unit here or there, you can score 15 VP at the end of the game. Like, that's a big win. So that turn 4 priority is far more important than the priority for turns 1 into 2, which is normally where a lot of players are like, I'm going to give you the first turn, you're going to move out a little bit, I'm going to either play for the double or I'm going to keep giving it until I want to take the turn. So that's my argument for it. And I actually, once I heard that, I was like, actually, that's really fun, because I have always been a long-term, like a turn 5 player, not a turn 1 player. So, right, I've talked a lot there, so sorry about that. What do you think? Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I've only played it once in the 2020 book.
Mm-hmm.
And they all fell on 1 to 2. So they were all on that side of the board. But like you say, it's actually that not far away from the center. So that not far. Oh, my grammar is so excellent today. So, yeah, if the distances, we're not talking about crazy distances here. If you set your army up in the center, you pretty much, even a fairly slow army has got chances of getting places, particularly late game. Like you say, you're playing for the late game. You're only going to be scoring 2 points in turn 2 because there's only one objective on the battlefield, and then potentially 6 turn 3, so it's 8, and that combined, and the last turn you're scoring nearly double that anyway. So it is like a proper, it turns the game around a bit. You sort of those people that commit themselves really early can sometimes leave themselves extended to somebody that's just waiting for the end of the game and to take advantage of any overextension of what their opponent does. So yeah, I think it's a good mission. There's nothing janky about it really. It's just it does favor some armies, so it'll favor summoning armies a lot, I think, because they obviously get stronger as the game wears on. But other than that, I think it's a good mission. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, agreed. James, Dan, you got thoughts?
I have. So I haven't played it this General's Handbook, but I will be the pain in the ass that says I liked it more where it could fall anywhere.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because you preferred the fun factor, right?
Well, yeah, to some degree, but also, so I think there's two ways of looking at it. So one of the things that always gives me a bit of a headache is when people like math hammer a game that's 90% dice rolls. And so there's been points where I've played this game and they've all fallen bad for me. There's points where I've played this game and they've all fallen well for me. But I think part of that was always looked at by the way that the scoring worked. And for me, I do think that there has to be like you have to understand that when you play Warhammer, for me at least, like most of the game is RNG. That's part of it. And almost part of the part of kind of the excitement and the play level of Star Strike was that you didn't know what was going to happen. So if your tactic is cool, the first one's dead center in the middle, that's where it's landed, and you're like, oh, I'll commit everything there because that's where I score this turn, and then all the others fall the other side of the board, then there's decisions made on the fly about how you reposition your army, relocate your army while holding one and taking two. I think it was Dan said one of his least favorite things about Knife to the Heart was you could draw a straight line between one objective and the other. I think the most interesting thing about old Star Strike was that you literally didn't know what was going to happen, and it showed you could watch people's level of understanding of the game based on how they could kind of readjust, relocate, and redo their army on the fly on a battle plan where everything was random. And I think that it's a shame that's gone.
So I hear what you're saying. So what you're effectively saying is it's going to skew against people who have a preordained plan in their head for how they're going to play, and then which I think is a positive only for tournaments, especially at like a more competitive end where you want player choice to be a quantifiable element for victory. You want it to be like they've decided to play around like with how they play, the tempo of the game and everything else. They understand that this battle plan is about turns 4, 5, not turns 1 and 2. So actually it's more relevant to players who are playing better. Like, so yeah, I see what your point is. And then taking that randomness away is gonna like, or as random, it's still random enough, I guess. Like not overly if you actually look at it. It's a pretty straight line. Go on.
I think for me, it's that loss of like, I mean, I can't remember what their numbers are, but like when one used to drop on like the far left of player A and the far right of player B, if you're looking at the board the same way, and it would be like, cool. So I've now got to hold this one in my objective, and I've got to take that one in my opponent's kind of territory, and probably one in the middle, on the fly, mid battle, with a movement 4 unit. How do I do that? Can I teleport? Can I do this? Like, I just think it and I think someone's just put Reaper's just put in chat. So it always kind of helped armies with mobility, but I think like,
yeah, however, I feel like that's a null conversation, arguably.
Yeah.
Like, because like, and it's a good point. Teleports and movement are going to benefit you in this battle plan, but they are also going to benefit you in absolutely every battle plan. Like, you know, quantifiably the same amount. If anything, go on.
No, carry on. Finish. Sorry.
If anything, it's more of an issue in this one is you don't know where you're going to teleport to till later. So like your opponent can zone more. You don't have to engage. So yeah.
I think for me the biggest thing was that I think it takes tactics. There's less tactics involved in this battle plan 2020 than there was 2019. For some people, that's probably a good thing. For some people, there's probably less. And I know people will say that it's random, so you can't be tactical about it. But I would have thought that was... It's more tactical when you have to make more decisions that you're unaware of.
Well, I think there was too much RNG in the one before. The reason I think that Star Strike is better now is that there's less RNG, but the same concept works. That playing later is better and turn 1 isn't as important. So I think like there's a happy medium that we're at now with this version of Star Strike, which I'm for personally. I think it's in a good spot. Dan, you got any thoughts about this? Oh, no, we've lost you, bud. Yeah, hello?
Hello?
Yeah, there you go.
Hello? There we go. I do have some thoughts about this one. I don't mind it, but I'm not as big a fan. I don't quite like it. I understand what everybody's saying about the random play and about teleporting. And I think the phrase like teleporting being awesome in every battle plan, absolutely it is. But this is a battle plan that is much harder for armies that are low movement and don't have teleporting. And I think that's the flip side for me. But when we do go down the line and get to a different battle plan that has a good element of RNG, I'm going to absolutely sing its praises for a different reason.
Okay.
My thing is I'm okay with this battle plan. I just think that there are better versions that create this that are more competitively playable by every book.
Well,
would be the way that I would say it.
Okay, interesting. Because later on, I'm going to say that I think that this is one of the better competitive event scenarios and battle plans. So that's a good conversation. Yeah. Okay, so that's Star Strike. Next is possibly the greatest battle plan ever. like Scorched Earth. Scorched Earth. Now, there's some caveats to this specifically. So it's 8 objectives across the board. The closest ones are 9 inches from the edge, and they're 12 inches on. You and your opponent start 18 inches apart from each other, so it's one of the close ones. Now, you get 1 VP for each objective that you control, just like normal. However, starting from the start of Battle Round 2, a player can raise an enemy objective for D3 victory points. So if you manage to get control of your enemy's objective, you can raise it for D3 victory points. You can't do that if they have an enemy hero within 6 inches, which is great, and a friendly leader within 6 inches of an enemy objective if you gets you an additional victory point. So this is like super leader heavy, yeah. Like if you have leaders, you can stop the burning. If you take leaders to their objectives, you can gain an additional victory point for holding, and then obviously you can raise for D3. Now, before I talk about anything else, in the Super Series pack and in every pack or event I would ever want to go to, this isn't a D3. This is a flat 2 when you burn it, because it's weird otherwise. Because you can just end up rolling like 3 threes, getting 9 points, and it's just a bit. In my opinion, it's a bit over the top. So I'm only going to talk about this battle plan as if when you burn it, it's 2 points, and I'm not going to discuss as if it's anything else. In which case, it's my flat favourite battle plan from the GHB End Convo for a bunch of reasons. Number one, it has leaders involved, but like their involvement is very much to do with your territory generally, and being able to like, oh, he's going to fucking keep this war chanter just on this edge so you can't burn it, but also he's fucking terrified because he's fighting all these lads at once. Not that he would be, not that he'd be terrified, obviously, Nathan. And
terrified war chanter. It's like an oxymoron or something. It's like a moron.
No, I'm like a moron. I think that's what you mean.
Yeah.
But the worst, the most uncomfortable part, if you've ever played this battle plan, is as soon as you deploy, you think, I can't put enough lads across this line, because you're deploying across the whole fucking 6 foot of the board, basically. Yeah, whole board, and you're trying to stop deep strikes, and you just don't have enough bodies. No matter which army you play normally, you don't have enough stuff to control the board. And I think that's fun, because really deployment's really interesting. Where you're going to put stuff, if you're going to try and push a flank, there's loads of interesting stuff about it. I love this battle plan. I think it's great for coverage. I think it's great for playing. It makes me feel really uncomfortable when I play it, because I put my stuff down and I'm like, I guess these 3 lads are really going to try really hard to hold this one objective. And the rest,
it's the same. I dig it because when you're starting, right, you're deciding, what am I giving up?
Yes.
Like that's the question that everyone has to ask. Like, I have to give up a certain percentage of this board. And for me, I actually usually end up giving away 50% of my board, because I'm like, if I hold half of mine and play for 2/3 of my opponents, like the 3/4 of my opponents, I should win the game. Because I'd rather play it that way. But I always get like those little nuggets in my pants of nervousness, because I'm like, oh, here we go. Like, let's see how this plays out. So yeah, I dig this one for that reason.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Nathan, what are your thoughts on this one?
So I've only played it once with the 2020 handbook, and I started off playing it wrong because I didn't read the thing where you score a point if you're on it. So I was like, hey, well then why the fuck do I have to hang around here? I'm going over there. So I just ran off of all of my objectives. I just like charged across the board. And then the next turn, the guy was like, and so I scored 4 points. I was like, what the fuck? You can score off of those things back there. Turn around, lads. Go back and get them. So, other than that, it's pretty good. I mean, including that, really, to be honest. No, it was a good game. I think it favors big armies, so especially at the beginning. It's quite interesting just hanging on to an objective for as long as you can, and then finally losing it, and then it's whether the other guy is going to be ballsy enough to burn it or try and score on it a couple of turns as well. So again, lots of thinking, if somebody's really comfortable on one that they've taken off of the enemy, and they decide to sit on it a couple of turns, and then suddenly they lose it, they'll be kicking themselves. But yeah, it's good.
I think there's also a really good thing about it in that, like, those backline support characters, which often don't get a lot of a look in. You know, a War Chanter maybe is a good example. Obviously, he does a great buff, but then beyond that, it's just like he's just there, like trying to zone a bit, hold an objective. He's got a genuine role now. Like, he's like, you're not burning this objective. Mm-hmm. You know, you can kill the screen in front of him, you know, outscore him, but not burn it. Which I think is like that. There's something to be said for that, like, because it means if something comes at you super hard, like an enemy army, let's say, and like manages to push through your general screen front line ish, then yeah, maybe they'll hold the objective for a couple of turns. But then they're not burned in the objective when it looks like maybe they're about to lose it back in the counter attack or whatever it might be. So there's something to be said there. But I honestly, the more I play, this is now my go-to battle plan when I like load up TTS with the guys, or like if I'm going to offer to play someone in a game, because as soon as I put my army down on this, I go, oh yeah, my army shit. Do you know what I mean? Like, or in all of the other missions where my army is good because it plays more centrally, like it's got all the buffs within range, it's got all those little key. I'm like, okay, I've got 3 layers of screens, or whatever the situation. However, I've built my army works well on most battle plans, and then never works on this one. And then you have to make a real big decision. You're like, I mean, I feel like the good tactic is you try and hold like a flank and then the 2 center ones well, and then you half-arse hold one on the side on the other flank, but then your opponent does the same, and then you've still got this weird like crossover punch thing. Obviously, teleporting's good, but it's always good. Yeah. Like I just really like it. I think it's a really good battle plan. Dan, you got any thoughts?
I dig it. Like I said before, I love it from deploy. I love the tension in deployment on this battle plan. Like every time you put a model down, all I'm thinking about is a poker face, right? This is the battle plan where you can mess with your opponent the most in deployment, because all I'm doing is like, I'm trying to hide how unsure I am about every deployment choice I make. You know, like inside I'm just like, but I'm just like, yeah, no, definitely. Yep. I've like put the models down with confidence, don't move them, and just like make unbroken eye contact, because I want my opponent to think that I'm confident in deploying on this battle plan when I'm absolutely not. And then they're clearly doing the same thing back to me. And you're both like, I remember I got to the end of deploying on this one once, and I just looked at my opponent, and bless his cotton socks, and I was like, hey, be completely honest with me. I feel like I look like I'm confident about how I deployed, and you look like you're confident about how you deployed. 1 to 10, how confident are you? And he was like, oh, I'm a 1. And I was like, oh, thank God, me too. Like neither of us, we were both like, what have we done? But the other thing I really like about it is those top tier armies that kind of are dominating because they don't deploy much on the board. Whether it's your KO, your Nuggets,
Eels.
Use your words, Daniel. Eels. This is battle plan totally messes with that. It'll be interesting to see where this goes with the Liberator pop and drop as well. So
I played Liberator pop and drop in this battle.
Oh right, yeah, okay.
And ultimately, like, they're weak on this. Like, I didn't win. I just like to point out, but I was just still playing my piggy army, and I just got pinned in on the first turn. 2 18-inch charges by 2 units of Liberators. Just like to point that out. So the key part here is that, like, when they do like push into your zone, let's say, and they drop forward, they don't have a particularly strong backfield. Like, at all. So if you are able to sidestep or teleport or whatever that might be, the Liberator conversation we can have about absolutely every battle plan, they just break the conversation, so there's no point in having it. They're out there, it's dumb. Like, let's just kind of fucking skip it at the minute. It's the only unit army that can do what that does, and it's just stupid. Whereas, like, if you think about other threats that can do it, let's say 60 grots, let's say your Handagore come over, you know, your opponent probably can, like, push them off the objective in a couple of turns. I know they're -1 to hit. Super important to remember.
Remember what happens, Rob. Every time you talk about netters, the stream crashes, okay? So let's just not bring that up.
I won't talk about it.
I guess that's the hard thing. Teleporting's always good. The Liberators are always going to be strong, and netters are the best thing in Age of Sigmar. So, like, they're the 3 honest, like, unchangeable facts of the game.
Yeah, but with the grots at least, you probably can push them off your objective in a couple of turns. Like, and a lot of the major things that you can throw early, you can because you have your whole army basically to throw them back off. So I think there's a lot more song and dance to this battle plan. I think this battle plan is super interesting. Like, and it comes down to like I've got a couple of units left here because you're struggling. And very much like I was talking about when I write my list, and I put them on the tabletop. I'm like, yep, I don't have that fucking weird 5-man unit that Nathan would take. That would just be stood on an objective here and there, and then come turn 4-5, I really regret not having them on the board because, like, if you're looking at it, like, ignore your opponent's army. You need 8 units in your list to hold objectives, 8 different, or like you need a lot of bodies spread between 2 objectives, let's say, but you need to be in 8 places at once, and that actually, as the game goes on, gets harder. So I think there's a lot of resource management, keeping units alive. There's lots to be said. There's lots to be said for this battle plan. James, you got any thoughts?
I think I just it's always a good one, isn't it? I think it's always an interesting battle plan. I think I know you already said it, but like when it's D3, it's broken because it just doesn't work. It makes the risk reward factor negative. But other than that, I always think it's a great battle plan. It's good fun. It's a laugh to play, and this is one of my favourites because every time I ever see anyone play it with the bloody objective rings, you realise how much of the board it takes up.
So much of the board. So like that, it really does. It's just brilliant. It's brilliant. And really fun. And also it'd be interesting to play with Gargants, like James is saying in the chat. You can kick the objective into your opponent's territory and then burn that, which is fun. I think it's a great battle plan.
Oh my gosh, that's a genius move.
Is it though? Because really, if you hold your 4, you just want to hold your 1 in yours. What's it worth kicking it forward for?
Just hilarity's sake. Like, imagine this one Gargant. So what? They're 12 inches away, right? If on your first turn you kick it, and then you get the priority for the second turn, you can have burnt that objective by turn 2.
Well, I need to check because I'm not sure if it's burn. You can burn your opponent's objectives in their territory, or you can just burn objectives. Right. So, like, I need to double.
I'll have a look. I'll have a look because for me, I'd be like, hell yeah, cracking in. Let's do this.
A player can raise an objective they control in the enemy territory, so you can burn your own objectives.
Kraken eater. Just gonna kick it over because like we were talking about that objective where you're like, I'm not going to be able to protect this one. You kick that one into the middle where you can protect it, and then on the next turn you kick it across and burn it, and you're like, great. Nailed all of the buttons on this one.
Yeah.
All 8 objectives.
Yeah. That would be the best.
And also, if you were playing their rules, like the non-FAQ'd version of the rules, or the FAQ'd version but the non-comped version of the rules, they could also make it so you can't burn objectives either. They'd be like, no, that's not allowed to happen. But obviously, none of us are playing that, so that's fine. Right, next up is focal points. Focal points got 5 objectives. You start 18 inches apart from each other. The objective in the center is worth 2 victory points, and each other objective is worth 1 victory point. If you own the 2 parallel to each other, so as you can see on the screen, it would be objective 1 versus 3. But effectively, the one in your deployment and then the one straight in a line in your opponent's deployment, so straight line. If you own both of those, opposites. Thanks, Nath. You would aim. Is that not parallel? Is that a different word? Fuck. Okay.
Parallel
opposites
is straight lines, and they're just points. So there's no such thing as parallel with a point.
Well, but surely, how do you make a line? Point to point, surely.
Yeah, lines can be parallel, but points can't be parallel.
It means a parallel line from 1 to 3, I think, is what you meant.
Do I? I don't...
Parallel lines have to be parallel to another line. So
all right, today's the day.
Parallel to.
Today's the day to admit that Nathan's like a builder and like did trigonometry for when I WhatsApped him earlier, and I'm the man who painted the floor of the brand new T-Sports arena and left my phone in the corner that I'd painted myself out of, and I had to walk back over paint to get it. So I'll go with Nathan on this one, and I'm fine with it. Like, I'm fine with it.
It doesn't matter. I mean, you could say parallel. I think most people.
It does matter. I got paint all over my trainers.
Yeah, well, that doesn't matter either. But, there you
go. Anyway. Right, so the 2 objectives opposite each other. If you own both, you get a bonus victory point. New for 2020 is if you have a behemoth or monster, that's important. Behemoth or, like, or monster, so both behemoth, a battlefield role, monster is a keyword, then you gain an additional victory point if you hold an objective. And that's important because some units are monsters without being behemoths. So that's quite important in some situations because you can have quite a lot of them on the board. So, James, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on this battle plan?
I always think this one's quite interesting because I always tend to find that what ends up happening is players end up holding, say, 1-3 or 2 and 4, and then everyone fights over the center. So I think quite often games in this divulge quite quickly into, right, I'll hold objective 4 and I'll rush objective 2. So end deployment, the other player will be like, cool, well, I'll hold my objective 1 and rush 3, and then we'll fight over the center. So I think this it's an interesting one watching people play because there's decisions to be made. Do you hold your 2, fight over the center, or do you aim for just one of theirs and hold in one of yours and try and equally score each other and push middle? It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think this is quite a good one to watch people play personally because there's a lot of decisions to make that are good that can very quickly go sour.
Okay.
Yeah. I always think this is an interesting one to watch, I guess.
All right, Dan, what are your thoughts?
I love it. It's frustrating and techie, but it's interesting. And I really like that you have to plan about what you're going to play for, because a lot of the time I'll leave. If I'm playing it, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, my opponent has this one, so I'm going to play to hold this one so that they don't score up on it. But I'll leave the other one relatively undefended because it's only worth 1 point to them. And there's a lot of interesting play to it. But the objectives are all close enough that if they were another 12 inches out, each of the 4 corner ones, suddenly it becomes kind of like a spitting match across the board. Whereas this, you can very quickly get from any objective to another one in a turn, even with a medium speed army, and be playing and competing for all of the points in almost every turn of the game as long as your models are still alive. And then once you throw terrain in there that's getting in the way, I love it. I think it's an awesome one to play, but also it's a great one to watch. And every time that I've been a part of a coverage team and we've covered this game, I always find it really interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, all of those points are valid. The only thing that's a slight issue for me is the monster thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's some armies have got decent monsters. Some armies don't even bother turning up don't even have access to monsters or behemoths. So it definitely skews. If you've got a monster and your opponent hasn't, or if you've got 2 monsters or behemoths, I think are those crawlers? Do they count as
yes,
behemoths?
Sir. Them and Bastillodons.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're playing against an army with that, and you've just turned up with a normal army that's maybe got 1 monster in it, then yeah, you've got a proper uphill battle, and it's just down to the army composition as opposed to actually playing the game. So yeah. So I'm not a fan of the monster thing at all, to be honest. But otherwise, the battle plan is fine.
Yeah, no. So that would be previous GHBs. This particular battle plan didn't have that in effect. And so for me, I'm absolutely out on this. This used to be my new starter. Like your first game, you're having a bit of a laugh. You'd play this because there'd be there's options for deep striking around the kind of flanks. You're still trying to fight over that center objective. You know where the center objective is, and you can project power from your objectives into the center. But now, in my opinion, so I think Nathan's point is right. All armies aren't created equal, which is cool. The variety in armies is excellent. That's good, that's fun, and whether the top builds or the more competitive builds mean that you have less monsters or more monsters isn't really part of the conversation. truthfully, some armies just don't have access to them at all, and their inclusion is weird. Whereas if you look at some of the some top picks, like Nathan said, Mortek crawlers, Bastiladons are a good example in Thunder Lizard. You know, they're shooting monsters. They want to just sit at the back of the board, and you gain 2 VP for turning up and playing the way you want to play. Whereas if you play, God knows, like pick a bunch of like armies. If you're playing Stonehorns, for example, you know, like they're having a great time. They're running forward, but their monsters are running forward. They're not staying back to hold an objective, like for an extra VP. So you end up with a kind of imbalance there, where the crawlers go up VP versus another monster army which goes down VP because it's going forward. So even in a conversation of monsters versus monsters, it doesn't balance it out in any way that seems fair. So for me, I like throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like this goes into my like trash tier level of battle plan. I know that sounds like it goes from, it's not that it's not fun to play and you could use it, like, but again, talking about what we said earlier, would I use this in a competitive pack? No. Right? That doesn't help anyone, in my opinion. I don't think it works. I don't think it balances it out for all the armies. I don't think it's useful. And it's also weird. Let's say, like, for a new starter sort of tournament, like if you were doing a beginner's tournament, you know, some bloke's like, I really like all these Karakakalites, you know, and I like these Zangor, and you're like, oh, fucking, that's cool. That's a Zangor. That's interesting. And he's turned up with no monsters, yeah, and then he just comes up against someone who has. He's like, oh, I don't get it. Why do I lose? It's like, well, you didn't really lose. You lost at list writing, but you didn't know that. Like, for this one example. And it's one example out of the 12. So there we go. Tarquin, big fan of the show, but I agree it's not a competitive battle plan. That's nice. I don't know why the butt bit came in. Has anyone got any more thoughts on shifting objectives?
Well, I think most fans shouldn't agree with what the show's saying, but yeah, for once he agrees.
I think no one should agree with what we're saying. We've got no idea, right?
It's a slippery slope. Yeah.
All right, so shifting objectives for me actually goes to the bottom of the pile. It's the worst changed battle plan since the last GHB. Focal points, sorry.
Yeah.
So sorry. Talking about worst changed battle plans, next one is Better Part of Valor. Better Part of Valor. 6 objectives. You start 18 inches apart. Special rules. To score on this one, battle line units have to move within 3 inches. So it's not the 6-inch score, it's 3 inches, and immediately gain control. Retreats can't be used to move onto it. So it must be a regular move or even run, but not retreat onto it. An enemy battle line unit can slay a controlling battle line unit and get control of it immediately. Sweet. Starting in battle round 2, you can destroy an objective you've been holding for various amounts of points, depending on how long. So if you've been holding it for a turn, 1 VP, 2 turns, 2 VP, 3 turns, 4, and then 5 turns, 8 VP. So if you effectively hold on to all your objectives with your battle line units from turns 1 to 5, you'll end up with 24 victory points, is how it works. I just hate that it's battle line. I think it's awful, and I don't like it, and I think it's rubbish. If you've got shooting, you just take out all the units battle line, and now they just don't control the objective. Like, it skews your list, so you have to have like big blocks of battle line and lots of them, or you have to like be like ginger and protect them. Like, I just don't like it at all. Not to like load the questions before we go into it, but Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess it does skew towards armies that have got decent battle line. So, I mean, most books should have decent battle line, but not all books do, unfortunately. Mainly things like Khorne and stuff like that struggle a bit.
But it also encourages like negative play, right? Because your battle line can't leave your objective to go to their objective.
Yeah, but I mean that does make it interesting. So it means you have to have interesting non-battle line stuff, or you got to have other units that can go and take out battle line.
But then your battle line also needs to go to your opponent's side to capture their objectives.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of books that have a wide variety of battle line. So, and the books I play, so like the Gits, have got lots of battle line, so I'm quite happy with that. But, I mean, most books should have decent battle line, but not all books do, unfortunately. So if you effectively hold on to all your objectives with your battle line from turn 1 to 5, you'll end up with 24 victory points, is how it works. I just don't like it at all. but then there'll be other books which won't have so much battle line. So, Bone Reapers, is it only the
More tech.
guard?
No, they've also got the horses are also battle line as well.
Is that? But that's if you take the general.
I think they're just flat battle line.
But
Aren't they?
just, oh, okay, yeah. Well, fair enough. I'm pretty sure there's some limited. So like more tribes and stuff like that, there'll be limited choices. So yes, it's a game. It's another scenario you can lose in the list writing phase of the game, which is a bit of a bummer sometimes, if you ask me.
I think that there's just two elements that butter my biscuit on this one. The reason I love the previous, sorry, not the previous. The reason I love Scorched Earth and not so much this one is you can only burn your opponent's objectives. Whereas this one, you're rewarded for holding your own and then burning them at the end of the game, which, like we were saying, it leads to negative play experience. But the other one for me in this is if it was like a small tweak, if there are no battle line, then regular, like if battle line trumped other units, that would be fine. But the fact that it's only battle line is what loses me on this one.
Yeah, it just doesn't. It doesn't work for me at all. Like, because the question is what are you trying to achieve? If like you put it into a battle, if you put it into a pack for a tournament, what are you trying to do? You're like, okay, we want battle line to be important. It's like, cool, they're already important. I've got to take 3. It's like, okay, like I don't want the strong battle line armies to do well. I'm like, well, they already do anyway. Like they do better with this. So now what you're saying is what you want is armies that have battle line to do better. It's all the top armies already. Like they're all doing fine. Pink Horrors, they're doing fine. Skinks, they're doing fine. You know, like they're all the battle line units are doing fine anyway. Giving them a bonus out of this makes no extra sense. It doesn't lift up any of the other armies, in my opinion, to rebalance it out, and it's just weird. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And also the correlation between this and the monster one. So you think, oh, I'll put focal points in, and I'll put this in, and you think I balanced it out, and you haven't really. What you've really done is just given an advantage to monster players in one battle plan, kind of. Specific monster builds, and you've given an advantage to specific battle line units or battle line builds in this one, but you haven't really changed the meta game that you think that you've done. Is where I think about it. So, and it just sucks. And also good point, Speckles. This battle plan. Don't forget, all eels are battle line in this one. Yeah, and that's rubbish.
Woo! Let's do more of that.
Someone's also said, Mostin Powers also said, you can't look at these battle plans individually. GT will need to include 5 of these. Players will need to be able to accommodate all of them. We're going to be looking at these at the end, and we're actually each one of these we're discussing with that in mind. I wouldn't put this in at all because I don't think it does anything in the GT pack to balance anything out. It's got 6 objectives, fine, but so have other battle plans. And the only thing that it's got is you've got to hold objectives for longer, which I don't really see that being a bonus because most battle plans you have to hold every objective for as long as you can, possibly anyway. So it doesn't do anything for a you versus me game. It just adds a weird caveat that struggles. So yeah, unless anyone has got any other thoughts on this, I'll move on in the interest of speed.
Negative. Yep.
Okay. All right. I feel bad now. Somehow, for some reason, I've put all of the ones I'm going to rag on in the middle. So I'm sorry about that. Next up, Places of Arcane Power. Yeah, it's 3 objectives. You start 18 inches apart from each other. There are 2 in No Man's Land and 1 in the center. Only leaders can control the objective by moving within 3 inches of the objective. So, like the last one, you can't run onto them. Leaving, and if you leave it, it means you don't hold it. Right. So you basically have to move a hero on and sit a hero within 3 inches. The only way you can take it off is if another hero takes your hero off the objective. Yeah, that's the way it works. Or the enemy hero moves off the objective. So you can kill it with, let's say, a battle line unit and move your hero on. And you score a VP, so you score victory points equal to the number of turns you've held it for. So if you've held it for 2 turns, you score 2 victory points. This sucks because Marathi exists, and we can just literally stop the conversation and just fucking move on. It's an auto win for an army. I mean, Nagash does well on it as well. Archeon does well on it as well.
Ethereal Stonehorns did very well on it.
They did, but they don't exist now. But they still do well on it. Like generally, like they're like like guard dogs on the objective. It doesn't work because the strong characters are good, like on it. But the strong characters are good anyway. Otherwise, they wouldn't make it into the fucking army list. So then, all you're really doing is just being like, trying to think of something and not pick a grot. All right, a Bray Shaman's just like, I can't wait to kick the crap out of that fucking Archeon on there. Here I go. Like here I go.
Yeah. I'd say it, but what it means is like there are very interesting matchups on this mission when you get two armies that have like 5 wound, not insanely durable heroes. You know, like when you see those matchups, you're like, oh, this is going to be a really interesting one. But that's like the bee's dick of the time. Like that's a tiny little amount. The majority of the time, you're just like, that guy's got a Marathi. Well, game over. Or what'll happen is Marathi sits on one, and then a Stonehorn sits on the other, and the entire rest of the battle is based around the middle one. I personally didn't like this one when it first was put into a GHB all those years ago, and I still don't like it now.
Can I tell you what's super fun? Super fun is teleporting over 40 skinks with buffs on, and then dropping some chameleon skinks down, and then the opposing player being like, "Oh, you killed all my fucking dudes." You're like, "Yeah, I did, because this scenario fucking sucks." Yeah, like that's the other thing in a shooting meta. Like, let's talk about Sentinels. Sentinels are like, "All right, okay, fuck off," and then like you're like, "Oh, you killed all my dudes." And you're like, "Yeah, because it's a terrible scenario. No one should ever play it. Not one time." It does. It also doesn't do what Scorched Earth does. Scorched Earth has leaders be important in your positioning on the board and where you send them to for being able to stop us. And you get bonus scoring, so there's a risk versus reward. If I send them at your objectives, there's a risk versus reward scenario. So if I got Marathi and I throw it towards you and I grab an objective with Marathi, I gain a bonus victory point. Big thumbs up. Yeah. So leaders are important in how you play. In this situation, it's just they're the only thing that matter, and it sucks. Is my thoughts, obviously, just my opinion. Nathan, you got any counterpoints? Any thoughts on this?
No, I mean it's not one that I enjoyed before, and I can't say it's got any more attractive, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we've all got exes like that.
I've not played this the 2020 version of it, but I don't think it's that much different from the other ones. It's still not one that I'm particularly fond of.
Well, no. I remember, I don't know if you recall, Rob, doing the coverage at CanCon, and I think it was this mission, and there was Ben Spinetti's Fish People army versus, I think it was Stormcast, and the game was over priority roll into turn 2 because the Stormcast just mortal wounded off all of the heroes. And it was like, oh, okay, yeah. And I've definitely played games where, this is back in the Skyfire heyday, where my opponent was like, I go first, take off all of your heroes. And I was like, well, there's not even any point playing out the rest of this game because I can't actually score. So I'm just going to go fuck myself now. And they're like, yeah. And
yeah. James, you got any thoughts on this one?
Probably nothing to add that hasn't been given.
Yeah, fair point. So this just goes in the bin, and long may we never have to talk about it again. So that just for everyone is that terrible scenario. Right. So one of the new ones. We've only got 3 left now, and then we're going to be looking at like kind of like what we might do as packs, and I put some together and see what you guys think of it. This next one is Blade's Edge. Brand new for 2020. It's 6 objectives. You start 24 inches apart. So 12 inches apart from each other. You don't actually, interestingly, start on your own objectives. None of your objectives are in your deployment zone, so you're not holding from the first turn. So at the start of each battle round, the player taking the second turn can is an important point, can delete an objective from play, but you don't have to. Interesting little wording, which someone only picked up to me recently. So you can delete an objective, and each objective is worth 1 victory point. I'm just going to let you guys know before you give your opinions. I'm going to rag on this to death. James, got any thoughts on this particular battle plan?
I like this one.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
I think for me, like, so I think pre-bound endless spells, one of the strengths of endless spells was like when that priority roll happened, it made you rethink whether you wanted priority or not. So I think that can also sometimes be a debate, and sometimes you'll stand there, won't you, and you'll be like, I want to lose this so I don't have to make that decision. But I think, like, especially when we saw a lot of endless spells, choosing right so you got to move them, control the first one that was moved to have some control over the order was big. I think this battle plan, as I imagine, knew that was all like they were limited to 3 because it was all together. I think this one also adds another thing to, do I want to go first? Because I want to go first, but then I could lose an objective that's really important to me. I just think was interesting. I think I like the mechanic. I like a mechanic that brings something different to them. But other than that, that's my thoughts. I haven't really played it because it's new and we haven't really played. So,
So MJ Pegasus has asked a question. I want to make sure I clarify this. Maybe a question for later, but why is it a large percentage of these plans that I assume was designed with match play in mind don't cut it for tournament match play? I think they're all okay for tournament match play. It's what's the best tournament match play set of battle plans, in my opinion. Like, or in our opinion, or even just as a conversation. It's what we're looking for, best fit. We're not looking for just, because they all work okay-ish. Like, it's all fine. So these cases that we're talking about are like, you know, like, it's what's the very best setup, I think. And also, Games Workshop wrote 40k match play plans for 3 years, and literally no one in their community played it for their largest game. So, you know, sometimes, I mean, Battle Part of Valor was basically banned last edition, or was it GHB 2019 or 2018? We just, like, flat outright, like, everyone was like, we can't play this. Because you could just auto-win on turn 1. And everyone's like, no. Nathan, you and me have played this ourselves a little bit. Do you want to tell me what you think my problem might be with it?
Well, yeah, obviously, I think it favours the person that goes first quite significantly. So, if you can swamp the board, score the objectives, and then start deleting objectives. By the time your opponent has got rid of you, you've scored that many points, and that many objectives have disappeared that that you can't come back into the game. So yeah, so I think low drop armies will have a significant strength in this, especially if they've got a way of putting their liberators in front of their opponent's army very, very early on in the game. So yeah, I can see that. I do think the like James says, the thing that makes you consider going first or second is very attractive way of messing about with objectives, and but the problem is if it's too strong, which I'm not sure if it is too strong in this. It might be. I don't know. But for example, in the Greasy Goblin, that was whoever gave the turn away had a lot of power in that game. And if you never won a turn roll and your opponent kept giving the turn away, you would never win that game. You'd struggle significantly to win that game. So you just have to be careful on how much power you give to the person that wins the turn roll. Like making it more attractive that they give the turn away is cool, but if you're making it so attractive that they actually can control the game so much that your opponent doesn't really stand a chance, or the chance they stand is very slim, then you've maybe swung it too far.
I agree with you. I think anything where you're trying to control like the priority roll to be like something of a disadvantage, or like not taking the next turn is something of a disadvantage, or you've got a decision point is interesting, and it's good that game designers are coming up with it. I think this battle plan. What's bad about this battle plan, in my opinion, is one of two things. One, that you can score on the first turn. So it was Grinaldi in the chat once who suggested this, and I thought it was a great suggestion. So effectively, if you just can't score in the first turn, then that's good, because then if the problem is going up 6 points. Because really, normally you start with some objectives in your deployment, and then you score, and you think, right, these 3 are mine, those 3 are yours. So it's equal. So I score 3, and then I push onto yours and try and score 3. But because they're in no man's land, I score 6, and then you countercharge. And yeah, you take out my front units, my skirmish units, or whatever it might be. But then you've still got the bulk of my army on those 3 back objectives. So you don't score 6 in the next turn. Like, you don't score 6, you score 3. Maybe you score 3. You know, like, maybe you don't. Maybe you score 2. And at this point, then you're at, like, let's say at least a 3-point disadvantage. And then even if you get the next turn, you push onto your opponent's objectives, and now there are 5. Yeah, and then but you've lost 1. It just doesn't work. The math doesn't work on it. And like, I've played this a few times now. I played it with Nate, and we've had some really fun games. But every time I've given the first turn away, and then it's happened, and I've gone, this is a mistake. And then I've played it a few more times since then, and every time I see it, I'm just thinking, you just go for, like, I've played it, and then I've gone first, and I'm like, cool, it's over. Like, I just win the game. Played this on TTS in Owen's Hammer Time event, and it was over on the first turn. Just moved all my pigs forward, and I was like, I win. He was like, yeah, you win. I was like, okay, this is just rubbish.
I think the advice might be get good.
No, I won that. Is the
okay.
important point. I won that.
Oh, that must have been a bad player.
I really personally like what this battle plan almost is. I think
Yes.
I dig it. I love it as a concept. I think James is absolutely right in that it is giving you reasons to give away the turn and give away the momentum. And where it plays then in like deciding maybe you get rid of an objective your opponent holds and you're never going to score. Or if you're destruction, maybe you get rid of an objective that you don't want to hold because you just want to run forward and smash space. So you don't want your opponent to be able to push onto yours. But the only thing that drops it for me is that they're scoreable turn 1. But I will say I really love this battle plan. I think it's awesome fun to play. I think it's really cool to watch as well. And it leads to some really interesting tactics. And I love that the objectives are close enough that you can still compete for the other ones when they're gone. You know, if they were back further, you know, in the middle of the deployment zone, then you're not going to be able to compete easily on another one if yours disappears. I just think that literally the only change needs to be you can't score turn 1. And then, or you can only score your objectives turn 1 or something like, I don't know what, but it would be a very small change that would suddenly make this a much more tournament competitive battle plan.
Yeah, but as is, it's just lowest. A low drop's good. Like, low drop choice to go first is already a huge strength. Like, it's already brilliant. You get in a battalion, you get command points, artifacts. You're already strong in a strong place. This just gives more bonuses to that. So, like, it's just straight into the trash fire with me. But it does need, like you say, Dan, it just needs like a small change, and it could be something that's genuinely very viable. It just doesn't have that right now.
Can we just talk about the horror show? Just because I still haven't recovered. I looked at my Twitter. That was a fucking mistake. Can we talk about the horror show that will be Liberators on this one?
Well, it doesn't matter. A couple of units of pig horrors is pretty shit.
Yeah,
like
true.
it's anything. Like even units of untamed beasts or like anything that can just drop on, can just grab it. And it's not that you can't fight back from that losing position turn 1, but it's tough. And
I think the thing is, if let's say you drop a screen across that's quite light, even your opponents, even if they move up, they can't, unless they can somehow kill those units off in the hero phase, they can't use their maximum movement to get close and put pressure on yours. They're going to spend their entire turn retaking their objectives for 3, ending the battle round at a 3-point deficit. Mm-hmm. And it's only going to get worse from there.
Yeah,
when you start losing objectives. And that's where, if you couldn't score turn 1, let's say your opponent goes first and they do that, they screen your objectives, you can still kill them off and hold your objectives for the opening of the game. Which I kind of like the idea. You know, when you see, like I don't know if anyone watches any form of motorsport, but you see how they roll onto the start line sometimes, like they get that running start, or like a lot of competitive like athletes and like track and field stuff. They get that roll on into the game. I almost kind of would love that idea that turn 1 is the roll on, like it's a couple of little quiet jabs and touching gloves while you get into position, and then battle round 2 comes and it's like, okay, we're on. That would be a really cool change.
Agreed. All right, so we'll move on from that one. Unless anyone's got any points on that. So we've got last two. We've got this is total commitment. Total commitment, and then force in the hand is the one after this. Total commitment's 4 objectives. As you can see, they start very close to the edge, so 6 inches from the edge, which is quite unique as a little thing. You start 18 inches apart, which is cool. So it's one of the closer ones. Each home objective, of which you've got 2, are worth 1 victory point. Each enemy objective is worth 3 victory points. So hold your own, go beat theirs up, try and score 1.
Or else, if you're a Gargant, kick them into your opponent's territory and score 3.
Exactly. I love this conversation like it's always the answer, but then I also fucking love every Gargant that kicks an objective 3 inches and just like looks at it like, oh, what am I going to do with this? The answer is fuck all. And on average, that's going to happen quite a lot. So welcome to the party, babe. Like you're just there like queued up. He's like, right, I'm going to win this battle plan. You're like, cool, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to kick this. Like, how far? He's like, well, actually, I need a 12. You're like, statistically, there's really low chance of that. It's like, yeah, I don't understand that. Okay, go for it. 3. Fuck. Okay.
Next turn is going to be 12.
See, you know what the other thing I'm really excited for, though? Is, okay, first of all, you're investing like 500 points in kicking objectives around. Like, you could have Gotrek for that kind of points. Let's just make that nice and clear. There is not much parity there. However, what I'm going to love is the first time in a tournament, there is like this cinematic moment where the Gargant's getting swamped and it's going to go down. And with its dying breath in that last turn, it just fucking picks up the objective and toe punts it back to the safety of the rest of the army. Like, will that not be the most cinematically amazing moment in Warhammer as the Gargant goes under like a wave of skinks or something?
It's going to be so good when someone flips up them objective markers, in it, James, and just flips all their models off them. Fucking triggered. Every time you say kick an objective, James is just more triggered. Like, because James, now what we need is
just slide it with all the models with it. That's how the game works now.
Yeah.
Kicks everyone.
Right, okay, so the opponent's one is 3 VP, yours is worth 1. Now, let's talk about this, because there is a special rule where no reserve, so nothing can start off the board, okay? This used to be seen as like, screw you Stormcast, right? Like, deploying stuff, like having stuff off the board and deployed on was pretty strong. That's changed up now. There is so much teleporting in the game now. Big shout out to Donal in the chat. I see you. Gorgeous man. There is so much teleporting in the game now that there are still armies that start stuff off the board, but there aren't armies that like necessarily need to start stuff off the board. Like, it's not like that's their thing, because there are redeploys and teleports. So I don't see this as overly negative. And if anything, the couple of jank cases where you do start some stuff off the board, for whatever reason, let's say it's Living City, although you don't generally tend to see that a lot, or whatever you want it to be, yeah. Nighthaunt, yeah, I guess, but they're already struggle, so like, you're not hurting them, I don't think, loads. A good example would be, I guess, like Fangs of Sotek, Salamanders. Those 3 Salamanders are in the sky suck, to be honest. And having them start on the board doesn't really make a difference in teleport, but you can't teleport and deploy a unit down. And I think
what about this Tarvin? They're going to be gutted.
This Tarvin? Oh, you're right.
They need their drugs.
They're fucking 10 dudes that they were going to put on the side.
Does it affect Eels much? It does, because they have to start all on the board. Now, they're fast enough anyway, but it is a negative to Eels. And I see that as a bonus, really, for the whole game as a whole. Like, their way of playing is very singular. And so, like, it affects, like, a build. And so, actually, this has gone up in my estimation. I was like, the no reserve rules. You kind of, like, you don't think about it. You think, oh, fuck it. And you go, actually, who does it hurt? So if you guys could give me an example if you think it hurts, like, Nighthaunt's a good example, Nath, but I don't think it's really... I think they're just hurting anyway, generally. Like, other than that, I think it's fine.
Nighthaunt and Living Cities, those kind of guys. But
the Prime.
Yeah, but the Prime can fuck off. Like, he's always just up in the air doing what he wants. He can just fucking stay on the board and just have a great time.
But see, the Prime on the board can still be from turn 1 throwing out that mortal wound, like, grenade as well. It hurts him, but it doesn't clobber him and completely break the unit.
I think my biggest debate is, so just talking about them all, is this our last one?
Second to last one.
Second last.
Oh, I've almost got around. I think one of the interesting things about these is that they all, like, as you go through them, they all affect kind of almost different armies differently. But this one specifically ruins some of the play style of some armies. So there are Beasts of Chaos where they can deploy off the board and come on, like, and most of them aren't even strong armies anymore. But it's interesting, isn't it? Would the rule not be better to just be like, all armies have to use standard deployment and cannot use special rules, and then you just like blanket it instead of affecting 30% of the armies?
See, now, if I had, thank to Cold Traps for subscribing, by the way. Now, if this rule was changed up to no teleports, you'd get me frothy. One mission in the pack where there's no teleports, oh, baby cakes. You know, you're not going through warp holes, nor holes, sorry. You know, you're not doing so many things. You're not redeploying. You're just moving around the board. Now, there's a whole conversation for like being like up and down. And I know Beasts of Chaos are the kind of standout one that get hurt by this, but they're already in a terrible place. Like, they're in a terrible bad place in the game anyway for like competitive play. So I don't think you're hurting anyone that like.
I think
you're kicking someone while they're down.
But they're already down.
All you need to do for the phrasing is you just say if a unit is removed from the board by an ability or a spell or whatever, it may not be reset up. You know, and then that very easily removes all of those abilities without stopping, say, summoning and things like that.
Yeah, and when we're talking about some of these changes, like someone said, no teleports, another kick in the pants to Sylvaneth, but they've already got all the kick in the pants I can give them. Like, they're numb. They've got a calloused heart. They've like, you hurt me too much. You know, they're like my Tinder profile. It's just like, don't hurt me. Yeah, I can't handle it anymore. Yeah, that's what Sylvaneth are like. Yeah, right. So, I don't see it hurts anyone it hurts people at the bottom end, but they're already hurt, and you not see them in match play. Like, and there's nothing that this inclusion of this battle plan or not inclusion. There's no one who sees this no one sees this in a pack and goes, "Oh, I was going to bring my Piece of Chaos, but I won't now." Yeah. Whereas, like, then they'll go, okay, it's 5 other battle plans. Can't wait to go, like, fucking 2 and 3 or 1 and 4. Like, what are you changing about the results from this? Whereas some of the top ends, it brings them down. And I think that's a positive, personally. Please swap, right? Has anyone got any other thoughts on total commitment? No? Okay. Right, last one. Force in the hand. Force in the hand. Nathan, have you got this one to hand so I can just quickly pop for a small break?
Yeah, sure.
This one's called the Dutch Rudder, I believe, for those who are familiar with that concept.
Well, I'll let you guys introduce it quick. It's 6 objectives. You start 24 inches apart from each other. Nathan, I'll let you carry on from here. I'll be back in a moment.
Cool. So you've got L-shaped territories, and 6 objectives that are running sort of diagonally across the board. If you had 2 lines that were parallel to each other, you could dot the objectives along those lines. Basically, you control the objective. So there's a primary objective. So in your opponent's turn, you choose one of your objectives to be a primary objective. And if your opponent gets to control that, they score 3 points. Otherwise, all the points are one objective. So it's a way where you can try and pull your opponent into areas of the board, I guess, or set yourself up to defend an objective. It's quite cool, I guess.
Yeah, I like it. Let's tell it for what it is. If you're not playing on a Realm of Battle board, this is a fucking nightmare to deploy on. Like, just a really hefty kick to the Gonzagas. But it's interesting.
Well, it helps that the 2 central objectives are sort of on the corners of the territories. So you've got to set up 12 back from them, but it does mean you've got some weird curve.
Yeah,
in that center there.
I personally like this one a lot for the play element of it. You either, like, in deciding where you're going to put the primary objective for your opponent to play for.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you're basically looking at your opponent and being like, I dare you, like, come and get it. And I every time someone's done that to me, I'm like, because you're trying to call, you're like, okay, I think they're going to make that the primary so that I'll go, because I'm never going to get it. But what I've used it for at times is I'm like, if I make that my primary, my opponent's going to go for that objective and destroy that unit I really want late game. Whereas this other one, it's touch and go, but I don't think that they're going to be able to pull off control of that objective. But that way they're killing units that I'm not going to miss. So I've set a different primary, and then my opponent's like, and I'm like, yeah, because I don't want you playing for my little safe nest egg back here. So there's a lot of, it's not negative play, which I really like. It's forward play on where you're trying to force your opponent to make tactical decisions or mistakes, and that froths me up in a really happy spot.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that you proper getting to be the bait, and using the objectives as bait. And this one you can do that really well. Also interesting, the first turn is that you can control the two outside objectives, but you can't control the central objective in your territory. So if you're defending, you've got to really spread your army out to the flanks, and you're not defending this. You're still not competing for the center, but you want to be able to fight for it later. So I would say this one spreads your army out quite a bit, really.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Sorry about that. Just to be back, I think the thing I like about this, I don't know if it's been said already, is that I like that it's a lot of decision making for both players over all the turns. There's a lot of like clutch decisions. What should I make the primary? What should I not? There's lots of like subterfuge available, all sorts of fun stuff. Like, and I think this is a really, really good battle plan. I think it's interesting. Like, it's got lots of options. You can be like sneaky. I think it's really fun. It's got all of the tools that you want, like in a battle plan, because it gives you some sort of control over the battle plan, like and the flow of the game without necessarily like making that too much, like you were saying earlier, Nath.
I had this battle plan happen where my opponent and I, by I think it was turn 3, maybe turn 4, we'd completely swapped sides. So I controlled all of his objectives and he controlled all of mine. And then the top of that turn, when we were choosing what would be the primary of our objectives, it became about choosing the objective we thought we could get back. And it was great, because I was like, shit. Okay, because like just both of our aggressive units had smacked the pants off of the defensive units left there. And I was like, how do I? And I'm like, and we were just looking at each other. We're like, okay, this is taking a really interesting turn. And I was like, I think I can get that one back off you. And he was like, yeah, well, I reckon I can get this one. And it was it's really kind of odd decision-making processes.
It's a good one. I really do think it. All right, so everyone's had a say? Everyone had a say? Everyone happy with that?
James, got
any thoughts?
No, I don't think I have anything to add that we haven't debated.
Okay, all right. So, talking about battle plan guides, which is kind of what Tristan talked about and wanted us to redo, it's slightly different to the old version. So, with COVID friendly, I don't think there's lots of 2-dayers happening anytime soon. So, looking at 1-dayers and what battle plans I'd put in for some archetype kind of tournaments. So these aren't, we're going to talk about like some other tournament, like actual like competitive tournaments in a moment, but these are more fun ones that are more themey for all those narrative fellas in the world. So I've got 3 types. You've got Kingmaker, Banner of Battles, and the Sisyphean Struggle. That's correct. Yeah, let's go. I know there is a 2-dayer in Australia this weekend. That's because Australia and New Zealand are absolute ballers at keeping control of the people around them. They don't take no shit. Big shout out to Jacinda. So you guys, I know that some places are going to have them, but just for the moment. So Kingmaker is all about heroes. So Place of Arcane Power, Blade's Edge, and Total Conquest. They're all the hero missions. Leaders are important. You play with your heroes. You have a good time. I thought that
Take
was cool.
Marathi.
Take Marathi to that event. Absolutely. If you want to make it super dumb, you can also obviously include focal points so that monsters are also important as well. And then Nagash and Marathi are just having the best time of their lives. Not Alariel. Not you. You poor lady.
Points increase incoming.
Oh, bless her. Jacinda, the Queen of Australia. Agreed. I know that's wrong, Dan. I know that's wrong.
I don't, to be honest. I'm way more interested in American politics than Australian politics these days. They're all a bunch of mongrels.
Don't know which country you mean. Probably both. Right, so...
Yeah.
So Banner Battles is all about lads. If you like a load of lads on the board, carrying their flags, stupid idiots with flags. So Better Part of Valor, Shifting Objectives, and Battle for the Past. Did we not talk about Shifting Objectives? Doesn't matter.
Actually, no, we did miss Shifting Objectives because that was what I was going to say. I prefer Shifting Objectives to Star Strike.
Fuck, I don't know how I missed it. Let's talk about Shifting Objectives. So sorry.
Shifting.
It moved. It shifted out.
Oh my god, I can't believe it. All right, so Shifting Objectives is three objectives, as you can see here. You start 24 inches apart. At the beginning of each battle round, you roll to see which one is the primary. The primary objective is worth 3 victory points, and the secondary ones are worth 1. There are only 3 objectives available to you, effectively. Dan, what are your thoughts? You were the one who want to talk about this.
Yeah, I actually love this battle plan. I am a big fan of it. I will go to town on the fact that I think of all of the kind of RNG scoring battle plans, this one's the best. And here's the reason. The reason I like this over, say, Star Strike. This battle plan, if you don't have teleportation, if you're a slow army, yes, teleportation is always going to be strong, but you can always play for where the objectives are. If you outplay your opponent and control 2 out of the 3 objectives from almost all the game, you should win the game. Yes, there's an element where you might lose it, but you always know where the objectives you're playing for are. Whereas in Star Strike, you should be able to play to prep for it, but you can lose the game based on where those stars fall. Or
see,
just
I think that's not the right. I think that the opposite conversation is true here and not true in Star Strike. I think in this situation, you commit to battle because you know where the objectives are, so you just commit to a battle and then you hope you get the right one. Like, this is far more random, whereas you wait on Star Strike on turn 1, you see where it lands, and then you commit. Like, Star Strike's only random if you've randomly committed across the board at some point. In this situation, you have to commit, and you just hope it comes up your way. And there's nothing else you can do to control that. You can't control what it does, where it goes. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
but see, but with Star Strike, if like with a slow army, if it falls on either I need to deploy planning for it to fall on the far corner of the board in my opponent's territory to have a chance to play at it in the last turn, or I deploy hoping it falls in the middle and on the other side. And I get that, but with this one, I know where the biscuits are I'm playing for. And the advice I give people when playing for this is play for 2 objectives. And you've got it's like a very tiny % chance. If you control 2 objectives for the majority of the battle, you will lose the game. And that's where, yes, there's a small element where you might need to shift off and go for objective 3. But yeah, Star Strike, I very rarely do I hear stories like, if I talk to people and they're like, oh, I lost it because of the objectives. And I'm like, oh, so you controlled almost all the objectives for the majority of the battle. It's just objective 3 was the primary objective every turn. And they're like, no, not really. I'm like, oh, so you were trying to get lucky on the primary objective being the one that you were holding? And they're like, yeah, that's probably what happened. So I completely understand, and I see, and maybe it's because almost all of my armies have been slower up to this point. So I've seen Star Strike as something where I can often be out of the game based on those falls, but I never feel like I'm out of this game.
All right, it's fair point. I don't see it being anything other than you fight in the middle and then you hope it comes your way, which I think is the worst version of the RNG sort of spectrum. James, you got any thoughts on this? You love RNG.
It's not relocation orb.
That's fair. The Greased Up Goblin's a better version. What about you, Nathan? You got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's all right. It's, I have played a game where I controlled 2 of them and lost the game, so it can happen. But yeah, fair enough. It's all right.
See, I put it down.
I'm not that bothered. I think old Star Strike was worse of the 3 than this one, and the new Star Strike is probably a better scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so going back to the archetypes. Oh no, don't go on. Because why?
Just because they're not so far in the far corners. Because I also played a slow army. Always seem to play. I don't think I think I might have had it once with the Gits, and then always seem to end up with it either playing the Iron Jaws or my Dispossessed playing Star Strike and shifting objectives. And the Dispossessed were proper strugglers.
Yeah,
most of the time.
You got nothing. You're like, I need all 3 to land in a line through the middle for me to have a chance to play at my opponent's objective.
All right, well, going back to the archetypes then. So Kingmaker, hero missions, Place of Arcane Power, Blade's Edge, Total Conquest, Banner Battles, which is loads of bodies on the board. So Better Part of Valor, shifting objectives, and Battle for the Past. So just loads of dudes. Your battle line are important. I think that could be a fun one. Kingmaker, I would never go to unless I was playing Daughters of Cain. But then Banner Battles, I think would be fun.
Wait, we're better Banner Battles. Would you go Better Part of Valor over use your words, Daniel, over Scorched Earth?
Yeah, because it's battle lines units specifically, right?
Okay, I get you. Yeah.
The bonus there. Shifting objectives, you're just going to have a whole heap of bodies in the middle, just hoping it lands near them. And then Battle for the Pass also would just look super cool as well. So then the Sisyphean struggle.
The syphilis struggle? Is this because it itches and leaves you with a burning sensation?
Sisyphean is the guys that had to push the rocks up. Like the Sisyphean struggle is pushing the rock forever up the hill in the underworld. So that would be Places of Arcane Power, Blade's Edge, and Focal Points. You're just having a nightmare that no one can be arsed with. Basically, that's your nightmare event. Yeah, which are fun. So there's some cool tournament sort of setups if you want to take them out and run with them, which I think would be fun. So now I'm going to talk about, this is just my opinion obviously as well. So first one we're going to start is a battle plan for beginners. So a battle plan guide for beginners, right? So if you were doing a one-dayer for beginners, I would choose Battle for the Pass, Total Commitment, and Total Conquest. Because I think all of those are like fun learning experiences. I think Battle for the Pass is the very best objective, best battle plan to teach new people on. Like, really, I think that's like, there's just one in each of your territories. One's worth 4, one's worth 1, 2 in the middle. Like, you learn to trade units in the center, and you learn to protect your backfield and try and attack their sort of forward thing. What do you guys think about playing Battle for the Pass as, like, for new people?
Yeah, I 100%. I think the biggest mistake a lot of people make with Age of Sigmar is that when they're teaching someone new, they teach them to play the game and they're focused on the combat mechanics and how the dice rolling works. I would say even if it's the first time they try Age of Sigmar, put 2 objectives on either side of the board, like even just the middle 2 there, even if you're only playing on a tiny little square of whatever, because the thing that this teaches more than anything is that Age of Sigmar isn't a game about killing your opponent. It's about scoring objectives. And killing your opponent is a means to an end, not you don't get points for killing your opponent's general. You don't get points for killing off of this. And that's where I think that this is an amazing first battle plan because it really focuses on that.
Yeah. I think that's the important part. James, Nathan, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the old focal points, really, except for the no central objective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not too complicated, fairly. Yeah, it's just the lengthways, the long ways deployment is sometimes a pain in the ass, but otherwise it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least it's not that stupid triangle deployment that they had before.
I mean, bonuses, right? Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh my
James,
god, that was the worst deployment.
I know, James, you got any thoughts?
I love that deployment. You could deploy in a Mighty Ducks Flying V.
You can still do that if you want.
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
But just
And I will. Maybe every time I play Battle for the Past, I'll do that.
All right, so then the next one is total commitment. Now that might seem like a weird one because you're not able to use some of like, thanks James for tuning in. Thanks everyone for tuning in so far, by the way. Yeah, I know it seems like a weird one because it does mess around with like your core rules for like a new player, but like it doesn't really overly affect lots and lots of units ultimately. And I think one of the things that you learn from this is like just it takes deep striking units out of the game for you, so it's like one you don't have to worry about. There are still two other battle plans where you be at a tournament and it might happen, but if you said your dick pushed in like at a one-dayer because someone like in the first mission because someone's just dropped loads of stuff in, you're like, oh fuck, like you know, like you there's one that you're escaping it on, which I think is good, but it's also same concept. Hold your 2 back objectives. There were like to stop your opponent and go and attack your opponent's other 2 objectives, because I think one of the things that is difficult as a skill to learn in these war games, be it 40k or Age of Sigmar, is learning to attack. I know that sounds pretty simple, but like there's standing there and maybe shooting, or there's like throwing your whole army forward, but learning that you have to attack while also defending is obviously a key skill that I think you should try to learn, and I think total commitment helps you with that. Has anyone disagree? Anyone got any thoughts? Pros or no? Okay.
I think it also teaches there will be some players who see a list that does well, and that's what makes them like they build that list. And this teaches people how to play without all of the maybe the janky stuff and just play an honest to goodness straight up game of War Dollies.
Do you know what
Without
I mean?
all this mamby-pamby popping in sideways and upside down and from the board edge. Just sit down, play the damn game.
like your granddad did.
Yeah, like your granddad did in Age of Sigmar 1.
Like in my day, if we wanted to pop off the board, it was because we got drunk and we knocked the models off the edge, and when we had to pick them back up and figure out where they were before we did it.
All right, and then the last one is Total Conquest, which again is meant to be like a learning mission. There's 1 in your objective, and so there's 1 in your deployment, 1 in your opponent's deployment, and then 2 in no man's land. And this is and you obviously get the hero gets you a bonus VP, so you're learning to make value choices on your heroes and where they are in the board, which I think is really important. And you're also learning to trade. I think you learn to trade on Battle for the Pass, like put a unit on, get it knocked off, and then counterattack. I think you also learn to trade in Total Conquest, and it's directly turned to VP as well. So I think this is a really good. I think all battle plans teach you something, but I think these ones specifically, you learn a lot as a new player for playing these over and over again. Learning to attack and defend, learning to trade, those 2 kind of like consummate skills that you generally end up with. I would say that you tend to see people like practice and perform with quite heavily. So that's why I've picked those 3. Has anyone got any follow-up thoughts on that? Nathan, you got anything you thinking or no?
Yeah, no, I like those. You're less likely to get burned by fucking it up in the list writing phase of the game. So, which is good as well.
Okay, yeah, I think so. Dan, James?
I'm all about it. Like it.
Okay.
I'd actually, to be honest, I'd love to go to this tournament if it was played at a licensed venue, because I could drink quite heavily and still play all of these battle plans.
Yes. Yeah, they're not head scratchers, right?
Yeah, and also deployment is pretty straightforward for all of them. Wow. So I'd be, and the most complex one, Total Commitment there, it's in the middle. So I've had a few drinks, but it's not the end, so I can still see colors and shapes. I'd be ready for it. Okay.
Well, so the next version is a one-dayer if you wanted to have some experienced players play. I think this is the one that separates the men from the boys. I know that's a terrible sort of like toxic masculinity phrase. I apologise for saying it, but this is the one that separates from the grots from the
Gargants.
Orc boys.
Orc boys. Yeah, let's go
from the elves.
Yeah, from the elves. There we go.
Oh no, it could separate the grots from the netters.
There we go.
Yeah. There we go.
There we go. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Done.
So this is you can't say you can't. I've tried. You're -1 to hit for fuck's sake.
Wherever there's a grot, there's an etta.
Yeah, exactly. So this is for us four to play in, or people at home to play in, because I think it has some of the key elements that, and they're very, very different as well. So you've got Scorched Earth, Force in the Hand, and Knife to the Heart. So Scorched Earth and Knife to the Heart are intentionally in there because they're dichotomous, right? They're at other ends of the spectrum. You've got all of the objectives to protect in Scorched Earth, like that's super important, and then in Knife to the Heart, you've just got the attack defend mechanic, and then so you're using your whole army to bear there, and I think those are polar opposites as scenarios, but also you play inherently differently. Like you're trading early in Scorched Earth, there's a lot of through play. Knife to the Heart's just chess, and I think that's really, really fun. And then Force in the Hand, which is the other one in there, as for all of the reasons we just talked about, it's a really good general battle plan with an additional cool rule which creates more decision points for good players and generals, in my opinion. That's my pick of 3. Does anyone disagree with them? Agree with them? Anything you think you would change up in that?
Sorry.
It's okay.
No,
throwing some shade at James. The only thing I would change there is I wouldn't put Knife to the Heart last.
Okay.
I'd swap it with, and the reason for it is this: Knife to the Heart. Competitively, if you're looking for the way a tournament rolls out, the big thing you're looking at is the people who get majors versus the people who get minors. Major victories versus minor victories. And so putting it in the middle separates your pack nicely coming into the last game, whereas putting it at the end separates the pack. I mean, it does it at the very end, but you could have several people chasing. I don't know. I guess it kind of works.
For me, I think Scorched Earth is where you can just play you can play terribly and lose, right? And then Force in the Hand, I think, is the same. So those two, you've got players who've gone through the process of they've displayed good generalmanship for two games, and now you're into the chess game. You both have shown competent decision making skills for 2 missions, and now you're right. Now because you're both now at that same kind of you would hope skill threshold, and you're this is the way to play. I'm jazzing on that. Nathan, you got any thoughts?
No, I like the idea of it. It's cool. Yeah, I do like Knife to the Heart being in there. You don't get to play it very often because, whenever you're playing a friendly game or a pickup game, most of the time you're we'll re-roll that. But when I have played it at tournaments, I've had some good games playing that, trying to unlock what you can do to get that their place, and having my own backdoor unlocked as well. Actually, interesting.
I'll still always remember Knife to the Heart for the very first Australian Masters, and I had a unit of 20 Iron Breakers that walked the entire length of the board, and by the last turn there was 5 of them left to capture, or 6 of them left to capture my opponent's objective and win me the game on turn 5. And almost everything else in my army, apart from my warriors holding my objective, were dead. And those I still... Elf Bro in the chat, if he's ever on, that was against him, and Hayden. And it was an awesome game, an amazing game, but those were the longest walking Iron Breakers I have ever experienced. They crossed the entire board to get the win, and they brought it home.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't benefit slow armies, but there aren't really many slow armies anymore, or they're already not making it, I think, generally. So, who knows? But these are my designed for, I don't want to say the best, because obviously you can just play any of the fucking battle plans. But what they're meant to is they're army neutral. They're really just putting the onus on the player in that situation. They're trying to create a good game for any army that wants to play the game. So I think that those are the 3 that I would pick. So then, if I was going to do a 5-day game tournament, it won't be surprised that those 3 are in it. So, oh no, sorry, I put the wrong image up. A 5-day tournament, a 5-game 2-day tournament. This is what I'd choose. So I choose Total Commitment, which and I've put my reasons up as to why. Knife to the Heart, Scorched Earth, which is worth 2, Force in the Hand, and then Star Strike would be my 3. Now that might sound like weird putting Star Strike in, but I really do think that argument for making it so that Alpha armies aren't doing well. This isn't in any particular order, by the way, so I haven't ordered this yet. But Total Commitment, I think, makes everything start on the board. Janky no-drop armies struggle. A Knife to the Heart, big risk versus reward. I think we talked about that already. Scorched Earth, talked about that already. Obviously, I've made that a flat 2. And then Force in the Hand, and then Star Strike. So it's Star Strike and Total Commitment, which are the 2 additional ones I've put in. And I think that they're really positive. I think it still makes all the missions neutral, but it adds some additional elements in. I think Star Strike does a lot what Knife to the Heart does, but you have to be more reactive. It plays like Knife to the Heart, but it's a bit more interesting, I think, maybe. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'm glad to see Star Strike in there. It's no relocation orb, but it'll do as a start.
That's all you want, James. That's all you want.
Not that it exists anymore.
No, I know. Sorry,
Sob.
Nate, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the main one that people might have a problem with is the Total Commitment. Obviously, some armies not starting on the board are going to be unhappy, but it's not going to affect Stormcast because they're not going to be playing in Storm Keeps anyway. But yeah, some Beasts of Chaos guys and some of the Nighthaunt players and all of them are maybe going to be a little bit upset with that one. But it being the first game as well, hopefully it'll be an easier game. So
I think
they
with
should pull through.
I think with Total Commitment for me as well, if you were the type of player who was like, I'm not going to this tournament because it has Total Commitment, you're also probably the kind of player that has a list that I don't want to play against. Like the way that you play War Dollies and the way that you approach it, you're like, I'm bringing this list. I want to kick ass and I want to drop everything off the board. And then it's like, oh, but I don't get to play my game. I have to play your game. I'm not coming. I'm like, yeah, cool. You won't be missed in that regard. But maybe I'm a little bit more jaded and cynical in there.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I honestly think that like just one mission out of 5 where they're just like, I deploy everything off the board, or even half, or like 10% or whatever, or even the prime, you're like, can't now, your turn, and they're like, fuck, like, chameleon skinks are a nightmare, like, and they can reposition, like, it's fine, like, I think it doesn't hurt the people who it's hurting, it are already hurt, so I think it's a good one, but it really does cap some of the more serious threats that are looking to compete and win the event. So yeah, and Star Strike I think is good. I think that the argument, it's a weird inclusion for me. I still feel a little uncomfortable about it, like a day later. But like that, like understanding that like it's a late game mission is quite unique. Scorched Earth, you're going to be straight into it. Yeah, Total Commitment, you're going to be moving towards straight into it. Force in the Hand, you're going to be straight into it. Yeah, but Star Strike is not that. You're playing for turn 5. It's more of a dance. It's more chess. It's more interesting. I think it benefits players that can play better, not armies that can play better.
It benefits summoning a lot as well.
It's true. That's also true. That is also true. All right, sweet. That's been fun. You guys enjoyed that? I know it was long. Sorry, but like it's been fun.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's good.
The only thing is, it leaves me wanting tournaments now, and Canada just went back into another kind of level of lockdown, and I'm like, damn it, it's going to be so long. But yeah, I dig on it. Just I'm frothy, I'm thirsty. I got that event thirst.
Yeah. I really want to play some of those ones because some of the 2020 versions I've not played. So yeah, definitely. Can't wait for this lockdown to get sorted.
Yeah, that's fair. James, you got any thoughts?
Yeah,
all of them.
Oh,
Go on. Do we lose Nathan there? I think for me, like one of the most interesting things is like looking over them. I suddenly realised how few games I've played since that 2020 book came out and been like, oh, I haven't played most of these.
Okay, yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack with these missions, but I think there's also a bunch of missions which it's not worth your time playing. Better Part of Valor, like Place of Arcane Power, you just throw them in the bin. Like really, like I wrote a list of just trash. What did I put? Place of Arcane Power, Blade's Edge, Shifting Objectives. I just wouldn't fucking play them. I wouldn't do them in practice events, and I wouldn't want to play them at tournaments. Like I would like these 3 that you see, these 5 that you're seeing on the board are the ones that I think I would concentrate on because I think they're super fun. And it's 5 of 12. You know, like I'm only throwing 3 out of 12 away.
See, what I'd say there as well, though, with Blade's Edge is with Scorched Earth, you've had to like put it on the back of it's changed to a flat 2 when you burn. I would say if you were to go, cool, we're going to do Knife's Edge, but Blade's Edge rather, but you can't score on turn 1. Like objective scoring turn 1 is turned off. I'd go, oh, okay, damn. Like I would like to see that. I'd like to see how that plays.
I think I'd have to playtest that more, definitely, and see what that's like. But that is an interest. Like bringing some of them back, so there's more options. I think is fun, definitely. All right. Well, anyone got any shout-outs before we head out? Anything you want to say? Like James, am I right? I think we've got some new T-shirts available.
Oh, yeah, loads.
What?
Loads. Bear with me, and I will link. Go through the rest. I'll get a link.
Well, we can include them in the show notes for people at home to chat about. Dan, you got any shout-outs? Any thoughts? Anything you're looking forward to this week?
I'm actually keen to see the battle boxes come out because I can already feel myself getting tempted, and I'm a little bit excited because, like I was saying, I need paint, and usually around Christmas, G-Dubs drops some paint boxes or like a couple of big expensive ones with a lot of selection in there. So I'm like, oh dang! So that's kind of getting me frothy. I want to see where we're going. They might not this year. They probably won't. Now that I've said that, I've jinxed it. But I'm also kind of looking at those boxes, being like, oh damn! Like maybe I start a new army as opposed to finishing off either of the 2 that are on the decks at the moment. And as far as shout outs go, I'm going to shout out James for once again failing to deliver on the Undergargants.
Pleasure.
Of course. Yeah. Nathan, what about you? Any Warhammer? Any shout-outs you want to make? Anything? What's going doing?
I can't think of any shout-outs. I just want to play some of these ones that I've not played. I'm particularly interested in playing Total Conquest. I think that looks like a great one. So, yeah.
Agreed. I agree with that massively. And hopefully we'll play soon, brother. We just heard some news that we might get to play. So yes, that's gonna be fun. James, what were you saying? You were saying something.
There was some teas. I've put a link. It is in the chat. So there are 4 new designs. No, 3 new designs. 3 new designs. Some water bottles left, and then all the stuff we've had for ages. So I'm pretty sure anyone that's in this thing now, I've probably sent at least 1 set of rings to, if not 4. That's how it feels in my head.
Big shout out to you for doing that. Any shout outs, James? Any shout outs you want to make?
No. Do you know what? I'll shout out Donaldinho because he seems to be shouting out himself in chat. So I'll give him a hand.
I'm going to shout out Speckles because he's a gorgeous frontline worker. But I'm going to shout out the Twitch chat as always. And anyone that leaves a comment on YouTube. I've got to thank everyone on Patreon and anyone who listens to the podcast. Please stay hydrated. I know it's a long one, but it was really, really fun. Like it's got me really excited about the future, like for events and how events look. And I think that there's more to this conversation. A lot, especially like you know, when events kick off eventually again. You know this army won, but what battle plans were being played? You know, like you see like a Gargant list do well, for example, and they're like, well, you know, there's basically an auto win on like focal points or something like that. You know, there's a real strong conversation about like not only the path to victory for some armies against who they played, but what and where they played in missions as well. So I think it's an interesting convo. Ultimately, and yeah, that's it. I've got no one else to thank. I think just everyone's great, aren't they? There's an Only Jams t-shirt. Like that's all I'm going to say. Get into your Only Jams t-shirts. All right. Well, Nathan, leader of the Cult of Nathan, thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having us on again. And keep up with the sacrifices.
Keep burning them goats.
Yeah. Just throwing goats into the fire.
That self-flagellation, or whatever it's called. Yeah.
We'll do that. James, thanks. You've been wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for looking like an extra from like a Tarantino movie. And you in a good way. He only hires fitties. You probably got really nice feet. And then and then Dan, thanks for being here, regaling us with the stories, and for drinking less. Like, because we're all worried and we want you to be okay.
Well, no, it was the Liberator thing last week that drove me to drink. And today, though we spoke about them, there was nothing that particularly touched me in a way that made me feel thirsty to forget.
Which is fair. Like, also send Dan as many Liberator shots as possible.
Please don't. Please, love of God, stop.
Nathan,
They'll be pretty good at them battle plans, won't they? Them Liberators.
Yeah, so good. So good. Nathan,
Margarita Monday, let's do this.
Nathan, I know we all want to get off, but last week when I was talking about the Gargants, I might have brought up something which we haven't discussed in a while, in the fact that there are Gargants currently living in the real world. You're the one who knows this story, so I would wonder if you could just close the show out with just quickly telling us about where they live.
What, the ones in Antarctica?
Yeah.
That are harvesting the gold and making it vibrate funny and disappear to other places.
Mm-hmm.
Them ones, yeah.
Them ones.
But, yeah,
why are they doing that?
They're sending the gold somewhere. As you would, if you had it.
Do they have any allies?
Yes, they do.
Who are their allies?
Old Adolf Hitler and his mates.
Sorry, what?
Can we end the show? I don't need any more description.
Dan, ask him some questions because I love it when people do.
I got to know something. Can I just get clear on what you're saying, Nate? Is that there are Gargants mining gold?
No. They don't mine the gold. They get the humans to take it to them.
Sorry, humans mine gold in Antarctica.
No, around the world.
Okay, they mine gold and they bring it to Antarctica.
Yeah,
where Gargants make the gold invisible.
No, it disappeared to. Yeah, probably another place.
Do they make it disappear to the cult of Nathan?
Oh, I wish they did, but
are they putting gold nuggets into their pants? Is that what's happening? Like, is it just like, here's our sacrifice, and they're like, yes, this will scratch my balls nicely, and then they put it down there. And they're doing this.
Could be. I mean, it was an old lady at a house I was working at. She told me all about it, so I should go back there and ask her these extra questions.
Yeah, can you please get some clarity for me? Because I need to know so many things.
Yeah, I mean, like, do the humans get paid?
No. Well, they think they're doing something good, but I don't know. We've got to ask the old lady.
Is this like a cinematic universe, multiple worlds thing? Like, are they sending the gold to Nazis in a different timeline? Like,
so much to unpack.
I think they're using the Nazis. The Nazis have been used. I think they're sending the gold to their home place, wherever they come from.
Right.
The realm of
ice.
Well, this has been a delight. And we'll leave you with that to investigate and go down that rabbit hole. Thanks for tuning into the Honest Wargamer. Don't forget, if you haven't enjoyed,
brain hurts.
Yeah, if you haven't enjoyed the Warhammer content, it won't be long until the Gargants, or specifically the Giants, rule us all from Antarctica. So we've got that to look forward to. You've all been great. I can't thank my show hosts enough. Look after yourselves and have a great day.